In the shadowed halls of Ravenwood Manor, a mysterious letter lures Hercule Poirot into a deadly game of secrets and betrayal. Black feathers mark a trail of stolen lockets, hidden vaults, and a family's buried shame. As strangers with dark motives gather, and a cloaked figure strikes from the shadows, Poirot must unmask the truth before a ruthless buyer claims a scandal that could destroy them all. Will he solve the riddle in time, or fall to the stranger's blade? Chapter 1. The enigmatic summons. Hercule Poirot sat in his neat little apartment in London, sipping a cup of hot cocoa. The morning sun slipped through the curtains, painting golden stripes across his polished desk. His mustache, perfectly curled, twitched as he read the morning paper. The world outside was busy, but Poirot liked his quiet moments. They let his sharp mind rest before it tackled the puzzles that always found him. A soft knock broke the silence. Poirot set down his cup, adjusted his tie, and called, "Enter!" His housekeeper, Mrs. Clara, stepped in, holding a silver tray with a single letter. Her face, usually calm, had a spark of curiosity. "A letter for you, sir," she said, handing it over. "It came by special delivery. Looks important." Poirot took the envelope with care. It was heavy, made of thick, cream-colored paper, sealed with red wax. The wax had a strange symbol, a mask with a single feather. No name, no address, just his initials HP, written in bold black ink. His gray eyes narrowed. A mystery already, and he hadn't even opened it. "Thank you, Mrs. Clara," he said, his voice smooth but with a hint of excitement. She nodded and left, closing the door softly. Poirot turned the envelope over, his fingers tracing the wax seal. Who would send such a letter? And why the secrecy? He broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was elegant, almost too perfect, like it was meant to hide something. The words were few but heavy with meaning. "Dear Monsieur Poirot, your presence is requested at Ravenwood Manor, Yorkshire, this Friday at precisely 7 p.m. A matter of great importance awaits. Discretion is paramount. Come alone. Tell no one. Yours." In confidence, a friend. Poirot leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the desk. No signature, no hint of who this friend was. Ravenwood Manor, he knew the name. A grand old house, tucked in the misty hills of Yorkshire, owned by the wealthy but private Ashbourne family. Rumors swirled about them, secrets, scandals, and strange gatherings. But why him? And why now? He glanced at the calendar. Today was Wednesday. That gave him 2 days to prepare. His mind raced, piecing together what he knew. The Ashbournes were rich, yes, but reclusive. Lord Reginald Ashbourne, the head of the family, was a collector of rare artifacts. His wife, Lady Eleanor, was said to charm everyone but trust no one. Their 2 children, Charles and Beatrice, were grown but rarely seen in public. And then there were whispers of odd guests at the manor, people who arrived in cloaks and left before dawn. Poirot's mustache twitched again. A puzzle was forming, and he could feel it pulling him in. He stood, walked to his bookshelf, and pulled out a small leather notebook. In it, he kept notes on cases, people, and places. Flipping through, he found a page on Ravenwood Manor. Just a few lines from years ago. Ashbourne family, private, possible ties to smuggling ring, unconfirmed. Not much, but enough to spark his interest. He sat back down and reread the letter. Discretion is paramount, it said. That meant secrets, big ones, and come alone suggested danger. Poirot wasn't one to shy away from either. His little gray cells, as he called his sharp thoughts, were already buzzing. Who was this friend? An ally? An enemy? Or someone playing a game? The clock on the mantel ticked loudly. Time was short. He needed to act. First, he'd need to travel to Yorkshire. A train from King's Cross would get him there by Friday afternoon. Second, he'd need to blend in. Ravenwood Manor wasn't a place for flashy suits or bold questions. He'd need to be careful, maybe even disguise himself. The thought made him smile. Poirot loved a good disguise, not just for hiding, but for seeing what others missed. He rang a small bell on his desk. Mrs. Clara appeared again. "Sir?" "Prepare my travel bag, please," Poirot said. "I leave for Yorkshire tomorrow. A light suitcase, nothing too heavy, and my gray coat, the one with the deep pockets." Mrs. Clara raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. She knew Poirot's ways. "Right away, sir." As she left, Poirot stood and walked to the window. London buzzed below, cabs honking, people rushing, but his mind was already in Yorkshire, in a misty manor filled with secrets. He could almost see the grand house, tall stone walls, ivy creeping up, windows hiding watchful eyes. Who would be waiting for him? And what did they want? He turned back to the letter, folding it carefully and slipping it into his pocket. The mask symbol on the seal stuck in his mind. A mask meant hiding. A feather meant something delicate, maybe a clue. Together they hinted at a game of identities, people pretending to be what they weren't. Poirot's heart beat a little, faster. He loved such games. They tested his mind, his skill, his patience. By evening, he had a plan. He'd take the early train to Yorkshire, arrive at Ravenwood by dusk, and observe. No rushing, no loud moves. He'd watch, listen, and let the truth come to him. That was his way. People lied, but clues didn't. A glance, a word, a misplaced object. Those were the threads he'd pull to unravel the mystery. The next morning, Poirot was up before dawn. He dressed simply, a gray suit, a plain tie, and his favorite hat. The gray coat Mrs. Clara packed had pockets deep enough for his notebook, a pen, and a small magnifying glass. He checked his reflection in the mirror. Neat, proper, but not too flashy, perfect. At King's Cross Station, the air was thick with steam and chatter. Poirot bought a ticket for the 7 a.m. train to York. The platform was crowded, but he moved with ease, his small frame slipping through the chaos. He boarded the train and found a quiet corner seat. As the whistle blew and the train chugged forward, he opened his notebook and wrote, "Ravenwood Manor, unknown sender, mask and feather, trust no one." The countryside rolled by, green fields, sleepy villages, gray skies. Poirot's mind stayed sharp, turning over the letter's words. A matter of great importance. That could mean anything. A crime, a secret deal, a family feud. The Ashbournes were rich, so money was likely involved. But the secrecy, the mask, the lack of a name, pointed to something deeper. Betrayal, perhaps. Or danger. By noon, the train reached York. Poirot stepped off, his suitcase light in his hand. The air was cooler here, with a hint of rain. He hired a car to take him to Ravenwood Manor, a good hour's drive into the hills. The driver, a chatty man with a thick Yorkshire accent, tried to make small talk. "Headin' to Ravenwood, eh?" the driver said, glancing at Poirot in the mirror. "Fancy place that, but odd folks live there. You a friend of the family?" Poirot smiled politely. "A visitor, nothing more." The driver chuckled. "They don't get many of those. Keep to themselves, the Ashbournes do. Strange lot." Poirot nodded but said nothing. He didn't need gossip, not yet. He needed facts, and those would come from the manor itself. The car wound through narrow roads, past stone walls and rolling moors. The sky grew darker, clouds heavy with rain. Finally, a pair of iron gates appeared, flanked by tall trees. A sign read, "Ravenwood Manor." The driver stopped. "This is as far as I go, sir. They don't like cars too close." Poirot paid him and stepped out. The gates were open, but no one was there to greet him. He walked up the long gravel path, his shoes crunching softly. The manor loomed ahead. A massive stone building, its windows glowing faintly in the dusk. Ivy clung to the walls and the air felt heavy, like it held secrets. At the front door, a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head stared at him. Poirot raised it and knocked 3 times. The sound echoed, then silence. He waited, his eyes scanning the windows. A curtain moved. Was someone watching? The door creaked open. A tall, thin man in a black suit stood there. His face was pale, his eyes sharp. "Monsieur Poirot?" he asked, his voice low. Poirot nodded. I am he. The man stepped aside. Welcome to Ravenwood Manor. You are expected. Poirot stepped inside. The hall was grand but dim, lit by flickering candles. Portraits lined the walls, stern faces staring down. The air smelled of old wood and wax. The man closed the door. Behind him, the sound heavy and final. I am Grayson, the butler, the man said. Follow me, please. Poirot followed, his eyes taking in every detail. The polished floor, the faded rugs, the faint dust on a side table. Grayson led him to a large drawing room. A fire crackled in the hearth, but the room felt cold. 4 people sat there, their faces half lit by the flames. They turned to look at him, and Poirot felt the weight of their stares. A woman stood, her dress elegant but old-fashioned. Her hair was pinned up, her eyes sharp like a hawk's. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice smooth but guarded. I am Lady Eleanor Ashbourne. Welcome to our home. Poirot bowed slightly. A pleasure, Madame, she gestured to the others. My husband, Lord Reginald, my son Charles, my daughter Beatrice. Lord Reginald, a broad man with gray hair, nodded but didn't speak. Charles, young and handsome, gave a lazy smile. Beatrice, pale and quiet, barely looked up. Poirot's mind noted their faces, their postures, their silence. Something was wrong here. He could feel it. There is one more guest, Lady Eleanor said. He will join us soon. Please sit. Poirot took a chair near the fire. The room was too quiet, the air too thick. He glanced at the others, his little gray cells working fast. Why was he here? Who sent the letter? And why did everyone look like they were hiding something? Grayson reappeared. Dinner is ready, my lady. Lady Eleanor stood. Come, Monsieur Poirot. We have much to discuss. As they moved to the dining room, Poirot's eyes caught a small detail. A feather, black and glossy, tucked into a vase on a table. It matched the one on the letter's seal. His heart skipped. The game had begun. The dining room was grand, with a long table set for 6. Crystal glasses sparkled, but the mood was heavy. Poirot sat, his back straight, his eyes alert. The 5th guest hadn't arrived yet. He glanced at the empty chair, then at the Ashbournes. They avoided his gaze. Monsieur Poirot, Lord Reginald said at last, his voice gruff. You're here for a reason, but we don't know what it is. Care to explain? Poirot smiled faintly. I was invited, monsieur, by a letter. I know no more than you. The room went still. Charles laughed nervously. Beatrice gripped her napkin. Lady Eleanor's eyes narrowed. A letter? She said. From whom? Before Poirot could answer, the door opened. A man stepped in, tall, cloaked, his face half hidden by a scarf. He pulled it down, revealing a sharp jaw and cold eyes. Good evening, he said. I am Victor Crane. I believe you're all expecting me. Poirot's mind raced. Victor Crane. No one had mentioned him, and his scarf. It had a small feather pinned to it. The same feather, the same mask. The mystery deepened. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. He didn't know who sent the letter, or why Crane was here, or what the Ashbournes were hiding. But he would find out. He always did. Chapter 2. Arrival at the masquerade. Hercule Poirot sat at the grand dining table in Ravenwood Manor, his sharp eyes scanning the faces around him. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows, making the room feel like a stage set for secrets. Victor Crane, the late arrival, took the empty chair, his cloak still draped over his shoulders. The feather pinned to his scarf gleamed faintly, matching the one Poirot had seen in the letter's wax seal. His little gray cells buzzed. This man was no ordinary guest. Lady Eleanor, poised at the head of the table, broke the silence. Monsieur, Poirot, Mr. Crane, we are pleased you could join us. Her voice was polite, but her eyes were cold, like she was measuring them both. Dinner will be served shortly. I trust your journey was pleasant? Quite satisfactory, madame, Poirot replied, his tone smooth. He didn't mention the cryptic letter or the feather, not yet. He wanted to watch, to listen, to let the pieces fall into place. Crane nodded curtly. The roads were rough, but I managed. His voice was low, with a hint of an accent Poirot couldn't quite place. Was it French, Italian, or something else, entirely? The man's eyes darted around the room, never resting on one person for long. Lord Reginald cleared his throat, his heavy hands gripping the table's edge. Let's not waste time with small talk. Why are you both here? This isn't a social call. His bluntness cut through the room like a knife. Charles, the son, smirked, leaning back in his chair. Father, must you be so grim? Maybe they're here for the wine. His tone was light, but his fingers tapped nervously on his glass. Beatrice, pale and silent, stared at her plate. She hadn't spoken since Poirot arrived, but her eyes flicked toward Crane, then away. She knew something, Poirot thought, or feared something. I received an invitation, Poirot said simply, folding his hands. It was most intriguing. I am here to understand its purpose. Crane raised an eyebrow. An invitation? So did I. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a letter, its cream-colored paper and red wax seal identical to Poirot's. The mask and feather symbol was unmistakable. He slid it across the table toward Lady Eleanor. Perhaps you can explain, Lady Ashbourne? Her face tightened, but she didn't touch the letter. I sent no invitations, she said sharply. Nor did anyone in this house. The room grew still. Poirot's mind raced. 2 identical letters, both unsigned, both sealed with the same symbol. Someone was playing a game, and the Ashbournes were either part of it or caught in it. Grayson, the butler, entered with a tray of steaming dishes. The smell of roast lamb and herbs filled the air, but no one moved to eat. He served in silence, his face unreadable, then stepped back into the shadows. Poirot noted his movements. Too smooth, too practiced. Was Grayson just a butler or something? More? Let us be clear, Lord Reginald said, his voice gruff. If neither of you knows who sent these letters, then why come? Ravenwood is no place for strangers. Poirot smiled faintly. Monsieur, I am Hercule Poirot. Where there is a mystery, I am drawn. The letter promised a matter of great importance. I am here to uncover it. Crane leaned forward, his eyes glinting. And I'm here because I don't like being summoned without reason. Someone wants us here, and I intend to find out why. Beatrice flinched at his words, her napkin crumpling in her hands. Charles shot her a glance, then looked away. Lady Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. The tension was thick, like fog rolling over the moors outside. Dinner began, but it was a quiet affair. Knives clinked against plates, but conversation was sparse. Poirot ate slowly, observing. Lord Reginald cut his meat with force as if angry at it. Charles drank more wine than he ate. Beatrice pushed her food around, her eyes distant. Crane watched everyone, his fork barely touching his plate. And Lady Eleanor, she was the calmest, but her calm felt like a mask. Poirot's thoughts turned to the manor itself. Ravenwood was old, its walls heavy with history. The portraits in the hall, the dusty corners, the locked doors he'd glimpsed on his way in, they all hinted at secrets. And then there was the feather. Why a feather? It was delicate, personal, like a signature. Was it a clue to the sender's identity, or a taunt? As the meal ended, Grayson cleared the plates and brought coffee. Poirot sipped his, the bitter taste, grounding his thoughts. He decided to test the waters. This manor, he said casually. It is most impressive. I hear it holds many treasures. Perhaps artifacts? Lord Reginald's cup paused halfway to his mouth. Artifacts? What do you know of them? Only rumors, Poirot said, his tone light. They say you collect rare items, monsieur. Items that might attract attention. Charles laughed, but it was forced. Father's trinkets? Hardly worth a detective's time. Lady Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Our collection is private, Monsieur Poirot. I hope you're not here to pry. Not at all, Poirot said, raising his hands. I am merely curious. A man in my profession notices things. Like feathers, perhaps. Crane's head snapped. Up. Beatrice dropped her spoon, the clatter loud in the silence. Lord Reginald's face darkened. Feathers? He growled. What are you getting at? Poirot smiled, innocent as ever. A small observation, nothing more. But the room had shifted. Eyes darted, hands fidgeted. The feather meant something to them. Poirot's little gray cells hummed. He was close to something, but what? Lady Eleanor stood abruptly. It's late. Grayson will show you to your rooms. We'll speak more tomorrow. Grayson appeared as if summoned by thought, his face still blank. This way, gentlemen. Poirot. And Crane followed him up a wide staircase, its banister carved with vines and faces. The air grew colder as they climbed. Grayson led them to separate rooms down a long hallway. Poirot's was small but elegant, with a four-poster bed and a window overlooking the dark moors. A single candle burned on the nightstand. Sleep well, sir, Grayson said, then left. Poirot locked the door and checked the room. No hidden passages, no loose floorboards. But under the pillow he found something. A single black feather, identical to the one on Crane's scarf and the letter's seal. His heart quickened. Someone had been here. Someone knew he'd look. He sat on the bed, the feather in his hand. The manor was alive with secrets, and he was in the heart of it. Crane was a puzzle. His letter, his arrival, his guarded eyes. The Ashbournes were hiding something, each in their own way. And the feather, it was a thread, leading him deeper. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the window. Poirot tucked the feather into his notebook and blew out the candle. Tomorrow he'd start pulling at the threads. The masquerade was just beginning, and Hercule Poirot was ready to unmask the truth. Chapter 3. The House of Veiled Faces. Hercule Poirot woke early, the gray light of dawn creeping through the heavy curtains of his room at Ravenwood Manor. The air was chilly, and the faint howl of last night's wind lingered outside. He lay still, for a moment, his mind already turning over the events of the previous evening. The feather under his pillow, Victor Crane's guarded demeanor, the Ashbournes' uneasy glances, each was a piece of a puzzle, and Poirot was determined to fit them together. He rose, dressed in a simple but neat suit, and tucked the feather into his notebook. Its presence in his room was no accident. Someone was sending a message, but whether it was a warning or a challenge, he wasn't sure. His little gray cells buzzed with possibilities. The manor was quiet as he stepped into the hallway. The walls were lined with old portraits, their eyes seeming to follow him. He paused at one, a stern woman in a black dress, a single feather pinned to her collar. The resemblance to the feathers he'd seen was striking. Was this a family symbol, or something more? Downstairs, the dining room was empty, but the smell of fresh coffee led him to a small breakfast room. Lady Eleanor sat alone, sipping tea, her face pale but composed. She looked up as Poirot entered, her eyes sharp. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot," she said. "I trust you slept well?" "Quite well, madame," Poirot replied, taking a seat. "Though I find this house most intriguing." Her lips tightened. "Ravenwood is old. It has its quirks." "Quirks, yes," Poirot said, pouring himself coffee. "And secrets, perhaps?" Before she could answer, Charles strolled in, his hair slightly messy, his smile too bright. "Morning, Monsieur Poirot. Hope the ghosts didn't keep you up." He grabbed a piece of toast and slumped into a chair. "Ghosts?" Poirot raised an eyebrow. "I saw none, but I did find a feather." Lady Eleanor's cup paused mid-air. Charles choked on his toast, then laughed. "A feather? Probably from one of Father's old hats. He's got a collection upstairs." Poirot nodded, his face neutral. Charles was quick to dismiss, but his laugh was nervous. Lady Eleanor said nothing, her eyes fixed on her tea. The room felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. Grayson appeared with a tray of eggs and pastries. His movements were silent, his face blank as ever. Poirot watched him closely. Butlers saw everything, every whisper, every glance. If anyone knew the manor's secrets, it was Grayson. "Where is Lord Reginald this morning?" Poirot asked, breaking the silence. "Father's in his study," Charles said. "Always is, obsessed with his artifacts." "And Miss Beatrice?" Poirot pressed. Lady Eleanor answered, her voice clipped. "My daughter keeps to herself. She'll join us later." Poirot noted the tension in her words. Beatrice's silence. Last night, her flinch at Crane's arrival. Something was troubling her. And Victor Crane, where was he? The man had vanished after dinner, his cloak and feather leaving a shadow in Poirot's mind. After breakfast, Poirot decided to explore. He wandered the manor's halls, his steps quiet on the polished floors. The house was a maze of locked doors and dim corners. He passed a library, its shelves packed with dusty books, and a locked room with heavy curtains. A faint smell of wax and old paper hung in the air. In a side hall, he found a glass case filled with artifacts, golden coins, jeweled, daggers, and there it was, a small statue of a bird, its wings adorned with black feathers. Poirot's heart quickened. Another feather, another clue. Was Lord Reginald's collection tied to the mystery? He heard footsteps and turned. Beatrice stood at the end of the hall, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. "Monsieur Poirot," she said softly, "you shouldn't be here." "Should I not?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle. "I am a guest, mademoiselle. I merely admire the house." Her eyes darted to the case, then back to him. "Some things are private. Please, don't pry." She turned and hurried away, her footsteps fading. Poirot frowned. Beatrice was scared. But of what? Or whom? He made a mental note to speak with her alone. She was a key, he was sure of it. Returning to the main hall, he found Victor Crane standing by a window, his cloak gone, but his scarf still pinned with that telltale feather. He was staring outside where the moors stretched under a heavy sky. "Monsieur Crane," Poirot said, approaching. "You are an early riser, I see." Crane turned, his eyes sharp. "Couldn't sleep. This place it's unsettling." "Indeed," Poirot agreed. "And yet, you came. Your letter. May I ask what it said?" Crane hesitated, then pulled the letter from his pocket. "Same as yours, I'd wager. Come to Ravenwood, matter of importance, tell no one." "Signed, a friend." Poirot nodded. "And the seal? A mask and feather?" Crane's jaw tightened. "Yes. Why does it matter?" "It is a detail," Poirot said, smiling faintly. "And details, monsieur, are my trade." Crane didn't smile back. "Be careful, Poirot. This place feels like a trap." Before Poirot could reply, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Crane's hand went to his pocket as if reaching for something. Poirot's eyes caught the movement. Was it a weapon? But Crane relaxed, his hand empty. "Stay here," Crane said, heading for the stairs. Poirot followed, his curiosity stronger than caution. They climbed to the second floor where a door stood ajar. Inside was Lord Reginald's study, its walls lined with shelves of artifacts. A glass case lay shattered on the floor, a jade figurine in pieces among the shards. Lord Reginald stood, over the mess, his face red with anger. "Who did this?" he bellowed. Grayson was there, sweeping up glass, his face as blank as ever. "What happened?" Poirot asked, stepping inside. "Someone broke into my collection," Lord Reginald snapped. "This figurine, priceless, gone to ruin." Poirot knelt by the shards, his eyes scanning. The break was clean, deliberate, no accident. And there, caught in the glass, was another black feather. He slipped it into his pocket before anyone noticed. "Was anything taken?" Poirot asked. Lord Reginald shook his head. "Not that I can tell. But this is an outrage." Crane stood by the door, watching silently. Poirot glanced at him, then at Grayson, then at Lord Reginald. Someone in this house was playing a dangerous game. The feathers, the letters, the broken case, they were all connected. As Grayson swept up the last of the glass, Poirot's mind raced. The manor was a house of veiled faces, each person hiding something. Beatrice's fear, Crane's secrecy, Lady Eleanor's cold control, Charles's nervous jests, Lord Reginald's rage. They were all pieces of the puzzle, and the feathers were the thread tying them together. Poirot straightened, his mustache twitching. "Monsieur," he said to Lord Reginald, "I suggest you lock this room, and perhaps check your collection carefully." Lord Reginald grunted. "Already planned to. Grayson, see to it." As they left the study, Poirot caught Crane's eye. The man gave a slight nod, as if they shared a secret. But Poirot trusted no one. Not yet. The masquerade was deepening, and he was only beginning to see the faces behind the masks. Chapter 4. Shadows of Doubt. Hercule. Poirot stood in the hallway outside Lord Reginald's study, the faint crunch of glass still echoing in his mind. The broken case, the jade figurine in pieces, and that black feather tucked in his pocket, it all pointed to something deliberate. Someone in Ravenwood Manor was sending a message, and Poirot was determined to read it. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. He glanced at Victor Crane, who lingered nearby, his sharp eyes scanning the hall. Crane's scarf with its pinned feather seemed to taunt Poirot. Was he part of the mystery, or just another pawn? Poirot's little gray cells hummed, piecing together the clues. 2 identical letters, feathers everywhere, a shattered artifact. The puzzle was growing, and he was still missing pieces. Grayson, the butler, locked the study door with a heavy key, his face as unreadable as stone. "The room is secure, sir," he said to no one in particular, then slipped away down the hall. Poirot watched him go. Grayson moved too quietly, saw too much. Was he just doing his job, or hiding something? Poirot turned to Crane. "Monsieur, you seem unsettled. Is there something you wish to share?" Crane's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "This place gives me the creeps, that's all." He adjusted his scarf, the feather catching the light. "You're the detective. Figured anything out yet?" "Patience, monsieur," Poirot said, his tone light but firm. "The truth reveals itself slowly, like a flower in bloom." Crane snorted and walked off, his boots echoing on the polished floor. Poirot didn't follow. He needed to explore, to let the manor speak to him. He wandered downstairs past the grand hall with its staring portraits and into a side room he hadn't seen before. It was a parlor, small but elegant, with velvet chairs and a fireplace cold with ash. A single window let in pale light, and on a table sat a vase, empty except for one black feather. Poirot's heart skipped. Another feather. He picked it up, twirling it between his fingers. It was identical to the others, glossy, black, perfectly trimmed. Someone was leaving these like breadcrumbs, leading him somewhere. But where? And why? A soft creak made him turn. Beatrice stood in the doorway, her eyes wide, her hands twisting together. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered. "Why are you here?" "I was invited, mademoiselle," he said gently. "As were you, I presume." She shook her head, her voice barely audible. "I live here, but I don't want to be here, not now." Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft. "What troubles you, mademoiselle? You seem afraid." Her eyes darted to the feather in his hand, then away. "It's nothing. I shouldn't have come in." She turned to leave, but Poirot's words stopped her. "The feather," he said, holding it up. "It means something to you, does it not?" Beatrice froze, her back to him. For a moment she said nothing. Then, in a rush, she whispered, "Don't trust anyone. Not here." Before he could reply, she fled, her footsteps fading down the hall. Poirot frowned, the feather still in his hand. Beatrice knew something dangerous. He tucked the feather into his notebook and left the parlor, his mind racing. The manor was a web, and every step tangled him deeper. Outside, the sky was gray, the moors stretching endlessly under a veil of mist. Poirot decided to speak with Lord Reginald. The broken figurine was no accident, and the man's anger hinted at More than just a lost treasure. He found the study door locked, but voices came from inside, low, heated. He pressed his ear to the door. "You're a fool, Reginald," a woman's voice snapped. "Lady Eleanor." This was bound to happen. "It's under control, Lord," Reginald growled. "No one knows." "Someone knows," she hissed. "Why else is he here?" Poirot's heart quickened. Were they talking about him, or Crane? He leaned closer, but the voices dropped too low to hear. A moment later, footsteps approached the door. Poirot stepped back quickly, pretending to admire a nearby painting. The door opened, and Lady Eleanor emerged, her face composed but her eyes sharp. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, startled. "What are you doing here?" "Admiring your art, madame," he said smoothly, gesturing to the painting. "This manor is full of beauty." She didn't smile. "The study is private. I suggest you explore elsewhere." "Of course," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "My apologies." As she walked away, Poirot glanced at the study door. Lord Reginald was still inside, and the key was in the lock. A bold idea formed. He needed to see that room again, to check the artifacts, to find more clues. But breaking in was risky. Instead, he decided to find Charles. The young man's nervous laughter hid something, maybe answers. He found Charles in the library, sprawled in a chair with a glass of brandy. Books lined the walls, but they looked untouched, covered in dust. Charles looked up, his smile lazy. "Poirot, come to read some dull history?" "Not quite," Poirot said, sitting across from him. "I am curious about your father's collection. The figurine that broke, it was valuable, yes?" Charles shrugged. "One of his toys. He's got dozens. Obsessed with them, really." "And feathers?" Poirot asked, watching his face. "Are they part of his collection?" Charles's smile faltered, his fingers tightening on the glass. "Feathers? No." "Why?" Poirot leaned forward, his voice low. "I find them everywhere. In vases, under pillows. They are most curious." Charles laughed, but it was forced. "Probably from the birds outside. This place is old. Things get dusty." Poirot nodded, but his mind noted the lie. Charles knew more than he was saying. Before he could press further, a scream echoed through the manor, high, sharp, and full of fear. It came from upstairs. Charles jumped up, spilling his brandy. What was that? Poirot was already moving, his small frame quick and steady. He climbed the stairs, Charles close behind. The scream had come from the west wing, where the guest rooms were. As they reached the hallway, Beatrice stumbled out of a room, her face white, her hands shaking. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped. It's gone." "What is gone, mademoiselle?" Poirot asked, his voice calm but firm. "Lock it," she said, tears in her eyes. "It was on my table, and now it's gone. And there was a feather in its place." Poirot's heart raced. Another feather. He stepped into her room, his eyes scanning. The bed was neat, the curtains drawn. On the small table by the window, a single black feather lay gleaming in the dim light. Nothing else seemed out of place. Charles hovered in the doorway. "A locket? B, you're making a fuss over nothing." "It's not nothing," she snapped, her voice breaking. "It was Mother's. It's all I have of her." Poirot knelt by the table, examining the feather. Identical to the others. He looked at Beatrice, her fear raw and real. "Mademoiselle, when did you last see the locket?" "Last night," she said. "I left it there before dinner. I swear." Poirot stood, his mind whirling. A stolen locket, a feather in its place. The game was escalating. Someone was taunting them, leaving clues to be found. But why? To scare them? To distract them? Or to point to something bigger? He turned to Charles. "Monsieur, please fetch your parents, and Mr. Crane. We must discuss this." Charles hesitated, then nodded and left. Beatrice sank onto the bed, her hands covering her face. Poirot placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Do not fear, mademoiselle. I will find your locket. And the truth." She looked up, her eyes wet. "Be careful, Monsieur Poirot. This house It's not what it seems. As she spoke, Poirot's eyes caught a glint under the bed. He knelt and reached, pulling out a small silver key. It was ornate with a tiny feather etched into it. His pulse quickened. Another clue. He slipped the key into his pocket just as footsteps approached. Lady Eleanor, Lord Reginald, Charles, and Crane entered, their faces a mix of worry and suspicion. Grayson trailed behind, silent as ever. "What's this about a locket?" Lord Reginald demanded. Poirot stood, his voice steady. "A theft, monsieur, and a feather left behind. I believe we are all part of a larger game, one that someone in this house is playing." The room went quiet. Eyes darted, hands fidgeted. The shadows of doubt grew darker, and Poirot knew he was closer to the truth, but also closer to danger. Chapter 5. Poirot's first disguise. Hercule Poirot stood in Beatrice's room, the silver key with its tiny feather etching hidden in his pocket, the stolen locket, the black feather left in its place, and the tense faces of the Ashbournes and— Victor Crane told him the mystery was deepening. Someone in Ravenwood Manor was pulling strings, and Poirot was determined to cut them. But to do so he needed to blend in, to move unseen. It was time for a disguise. The group stood in uneasy silence. Lady Eleanor's eyes flicked to Beatrice, who sat trembling on the bed. Lord Reginald's face was red, his fists clenched. Charles leaned against the doorframe, his casual smirk gone. Crane stood apart, his scarf's feather catching the dim light, his expression unreadable. Grayson, the butler, hovered in the background, his silence louder than words. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Eleanor said, her voice sharp. "You speak of a game. What do you mean?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "A game, madame, where someone leaves clues, feathers, letters, broken artifacts to lead us somewhere, or to mislead us. I intend to find out which." Lord Reginald snorted. "Nonsense. A thief took Beatrice's locket. Probably a servant." Grayson stiffened but said nothing. Poirot noted it. The butler was too quiet, too watchful. "Perhaps," Poirot said, "but the feather suggests otherwise. It is a sign, a signature." Beatrice looked up, her voice shaky. "Why my locket? It's just a keepsake." Poirot's eyes softened. "That, mademoiselle, is what we must discover. What was inside the locket?" Her hands twisted. "A picture of my mother. And a lock of her hair." Lady Eleanor's face tightened. That locket was a family heirloom. It should not have been touched. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. A personal theft, a family treasure. This was no random act. He glanced at Crane, who hadn't spoken. "Monsieur Crane, you are quiet. Have you seen such feathers before?" Crane's eyes narrowed. "Never, but I don't like being part of someone's game." Charles laughed, a nervous edge to it. "Maybe it's just a prank, someone's having fun." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A prank, monsieur? With stolen heirlooms and broken artifacts? I think not." The room grew tense. Lady Eleanor clapped her hands. "Enough. We'll search the house." Grayson organized the staff. Grayson nodded and left, his steps silent. Poirot watched him go, then turned to the others. "I will assist, madame, but I must explore alone. The truth hides in small places." Lord Reginald grunted. "Do what you must, but stay out of my study." Poirot bowed slightly. "Of course, monsieur." But his mind was already planning. The study, the artifacts, the key in his pocket. He needed to see more. As the group dispersed, Poirot slipped back to his room. He locked the door and opened his suitcase. Inside was a small leather case, hidden under his shirts. He opened it to reveal his tools of disguise: a gray wig, a pair of spectacles, a false beard, and a set of plain clothes. A groundskeeper's outfit, worn but clean. He smiled. To find the truth, he would become someone else. He changed quickly, tucking his mustache under the beard and adjusting the wig. The spectacles sat low on his nose, making him look older. less polished. He checked the mirror. Gone was Hercule Poirot, the famous detective. Now he was Henri, a quiet worker who could move unnoticed. He slipped the silver key and his notebook into his pocket, then left the room. The manor was busy now, with servants searching under Lady Eleanor's orders. Poirot moved through the halls, his head down, his steps slow. No one glanced at him twice. A groundskeeper was invisible in a house like this. He headed to the west wing where the servants' quarters were. If a thief was among them, they might have left a trace. The hallway was narrow, the air damp. He passed a maid dusting a shelf, her hands shaking. "Excuse me, mademoiselle," he said, his voice rougher, accented. "Have you seen a locket? Silver, with a clasp?" She jumped, then shook her head. "No, sir. I don't know anything." Her eyes darted away and she hurried off. Poirot frowned. Fear again. This house was full of it. At the end of the hall was a locked door, smaller than the others. He tried the silver key. It turned with a soft click. Inside was a storage room, cluttered with old furniture and crates. Dust covered everything, but one crate looked new, its wood unmarred. Poirot knelt, his spectacles slipping slightly. He pried open the lid. Inside were papers, letters, receipts, and a small journal. He flipped through the journal. The handwriting was sharp, like the letter that brought him here. One page caught his eye. "The feather marks the truth, trust no one." No signature, but a tiny sketch of a mask and feather. His heart raced. This was no servant's hiding place. Someone important was using this room. He tucked the journal into his coat and closed the crate. As he stood, a shadow moved in the doorway. He froze. Grayson stood there, his eyes narrow. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low. Poirot kept his head down, his voice gruff. "Henri, sir, groundskeeper. Checking for the locket." Grayson stepped closer. "This room is off limits, get out." Poirot nodded, shuffling past. Grayson's gaze burned into him, but he didn't follow. Poirot's heart pounded. The butler knew more than he let on. Was he guarding the room or something in it? Back in the main hall, Poirot shed his disguise, behind a curtain, tucking the wig and beard into his coat. He adjusted his tie and became Hercule Poirot again. The journal weighed heavy in his pocket. He needed to read it, but not here. Eyes were everywhere. He found the Ashbournes in the drawing room, arguing in hushed tones. Victor Crane stood by the window watching the moors. Beatrice was absent. Poirot cleared his throat. "Any news of the locket, madame?" Lady Eleanor turned, her face tight. "Nothing. The servants found nothing." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "we should look beyond the servants. The feather suggests intention." Lord Reginald scoffed. "You and your feathers. This is a waste of time." Crane turned, his voice sharp. "Maybe not. I found something in my room, another feather tucked in my bag." The room went still. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Show me, monsieur." Crane led them to his room, a mirror, of Poirot's. Small, elegant with a single candle. He opened his bag and pulled out a black feather, identical to the others. But this one had a tiny note tied to it, written in the same sharp handwriting. "Look closer." Poirot's mind raced. The game was bold now, the clues piling up. He glanced at Crane. "When did you find this?" "An hour ago," Crane said. "I didn't touch my bag until now." Poirot nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The journal, the key, the feathers, the note. They were all connected. Someone was leading him, but to what? A trap? A secret? Or a crime not yet committed? As they left Crane's room, a bell rang downstairs. Grayson appeared. "A guest has arrived, my lady," he said to Lady Eleanor. Unannounced, her face paled. "Who?" "A woman," Grayson said. "She calls herself Madame Villette." Poirot's heart skipped. Another player in the masquerade. He followed. The group downstairs, his hand on the journal in his pocket. The woman stood in the hall, cloaked in black, a feathered hat casting shadows over her face. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Forgive my intrusion," she said, her voice smooth. "I was invited." She held up a letter, cream paper, red wax, mask and feather seal. Poirot's little gray cells buzzed louder. The game had just grown bigger, and the shadows of doubt darker still. Chapter 6. Riddles in the Drawing Room. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hall of Ravenwood Manor, his sharp eyes fixed on the newcomer, Madame Villette. Her black cloak and feathered hat cast a dramatic shadow, and the letter she held, cream, paper, red wax, mask and feather seal, matched the ones that had summoned him and Victor Crane. The air crackled with tension as the Ashbournes stared at her, their faces a mix of surprise and suspicion. Poirot's little gray cells buzzed. Another player had entered the game, and the puzzle was growing more complex. Lady Eleanor stepped forward, her voice icy. "Madame Villette, you say? We were not expecting you." The woman smiled, her lips red against her pale face. "The invitation was clear," she said, waving the letter. "A matter of great importance," it said. "I could not refuse." Lord Reginald's eyes narrowed. "Who sent it? We've had enough strangers barging in." Madame Villette tilted her head, her hat's feather swaying. "A friend, it seems. The same who invited Monsieur Poirot and Mr. Crane, I presume." Poirot's mustache twitched. She knew his name and Crane's. Had she been watching, or was she part of the plan? "Madame," he said, his voice smooth. "May I see your letter?" She handed it over with a graceful nod. Poirot scanned it quickly. The words were identical to his. "Come to Ravenwood. Matter of importance. Tell no one." The handwriting, the seal, the feather, all the same. He returned it, his mind racing. 3 letters now, all unsigned. The game was deliberate, and the players were being gathered for a purpose. "Let us retire to the drawing room," Lady Eleanor said, her tone clipped. "We'll sort this out." The group moved to the drawing room, its heavy curtains dimming the gray afternoon light. A fire crackled, but the warmth didn't reach the chill in the air. Charles slumped into a chair, his usual smirk replaced by a frown. Beatrice sat near the fire, her hands clasped tightly. Lord Reginald stood by a cabinet pouring himself a drink. Crane leaned against a wall, his scarf's feather gleaming. Madame Villette settled gracefully on a sofa, her eyes scanning the room like a cat watching mice. Poirot took a seat, his notebook hidden in his pocket beside the silver key and the journal he'd found. He needed answers, but he'd have to tread carefully. The room was a powder keg, and one wrong word could spark it. "Madame Villette," Poirot began, "may I ask why you accepted this mysterious invitation?" Her smile was sharp. "Curiosity, Monsieur Poirot, and a sense that something important is happening here. I am not one to ignore such things." Charles snorted. "Important? A stolen locket and some feathers? Sounds like a bad joke." Beatrice flinched, her voice soft. "It's not a joke. My locket, it meant everything." Lady Eleanor shot her daughter a look. "Enough, Beatrice. We'll find it." Poirot's eyes flicked between them. Beatrice's fear, Charles's dismissal, Lady Eleanor's control. They were all hiding something. He turned to Madame Villette. "And you, madam, have you seen feathers like these before?" He held up the feather. From Beatrice's room, watching her closely. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile didn't waver. "Feathers? No, but they are lovely. A curious choice for a clue." Crane spoke up, his voice low. "Clue or taunt? Someone's playing with us." Lord Reginald slammed his glass down. "I've had enough of this nonsense. Feathers, letters, broken figurines. Who's behind it?" Poirot leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "That, monsieur, is what I am here to discover. But I need your help. Tell me, what is so special about this manor? Why would someone summon strangers here?" The room went quiet. Lady Eleanor's fingers tightened on her chair. Charles looked at his father, who stared into his drink. Beatrice's eyes dropped to the floor. Crane and Madame Villette exchanged a glance, quick but noticeable. Poirot's heart quickened. They all knew something, but no one was talking. Finally, Lady Eleanor spoke. "Ravenwood is an old house, Monsieur Poirot. It had history, but nothing that concerns you." "History," Poirot repeated, his tone gentle. "And yet someone thinks it concerns me, and Monsieur Crane, and Madame Villette." Madame Villette laughed softly. "Perhaps we're here to uncover your secrets, Lady Eleanor." The air grew colder. Lord Reginald's face reddened. "Watch your tongue, woman." Before the argument could escalate, Grayson entered, his face as blank as ever. "A telegram, my lord," he said, handing it to Lord Reginald. Reginald tore it open, his eyes scanning the paper. His face paled. "It's from London, a buyer for the collection. He's coming tomorrow." "What buyer?" Charles asked, sitting up. Reginald crumpled the telegram. "None of your business. It's my collection." Poirot's mind raced. The collection again. Artifacts, feathers, a broken figurine. Was the locket part of it? And this buyer, another player in the game? He needed to see that journal he'd found, but not here, not now. "Perhaps," Poirot said. "We should focus on the locket. Mademoiselle Beatrice, can you describe it? Again?" Beatrice's voice was small. "Silver, heart-shaped with a rose engraved on it. It opens to a picture of my mother and a lock of her hair." Poirot nodded, his mind noting the details. "A personal item, sentimental. Why steal it? To hurt Beatrice? Or to hide what was inside?" Madame Villette tilted her head. "A picture, you say, of your mother? How touching." Beatrice's eyes flashed. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," Madame Villette said, her smile sly. "Only that family keepsakes are so precious, and so revealing." Poirot caught the hint in her words. Was the locket more than a keepsake? Did it hold a secret? A picture? A name? Something worth stealing? Before he could press, a loud thud came from above. Everyone froze. Grayson moved first, heading for the stairs. "Stay here," he said, but Poirot was already following, his small frame quick and silent. Day 26. The elusive stranger, Hercule Poirot, stood in the dimly lit hallway of Ravenwood Manor, his heart pounding as the echo of the loud thud from upstairs lingered. The group in the drawing room had frozen, their faces a mix of fear and suspicion, and Poirot knew the mystery was tightening its grip. His little gray cells were working fast, piecing together the feathers, the stolen locket, the cryptic, letters, and now this new sound. The game was moving, and he was determined to keep up. Grayson, the butler, was already halfway up the stairs, his steps silent but swift. Poirot followed, his eyes scanning the shadows. Victor Crane and Charles Ashbourne were close behind, while Lady Eleanor and Beatrice stayed in the drawing room, their faces pale. Madame Villette stood, her feathered hat tilting as she watched the men climb the stairs, her expression unreadable. The sound had come from the east wing, near Lord Reginald's study. As they reached the landing, Poirot noticed the study door was still locked, but a side door to a small storage room was ajar. Grayson pushed it open, revealing a toppled chair and a scattered pile of papers on the floor. A window was open, its curtain fluttering in the cold breeze. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Someone had been here. "Another break-in," Grayson muttered, his voice low but steady. He knelt to gather the papers, his movements too calm for Poirot's liking. Poirot stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the room. The papers were old, letters, receipts, and a few sketches of artifacts. One caught his attention, a drawing of a heart-shaped locket with a rose engraving. His pulse quickened. Beatrice's locket. He glanced at Grayson, who was stacking the papers neatly, his face blank. "Too blank. Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, his voice smooth. "This room seems popular today." Grayson didn't look up. Servants are careless. Must have been a clumsy maid. Poirot's mustache twitched. A lie, and a poor one. He knelt by the papers, pretending to help, and spotted a black feather among them, half hidden under a sheet. He slipped it into his pocket before Grayson could see. Another feather, another clue. The room felt alive with secrets, and Poirot was closing in. Charles peered over his shoulder. More of Father's junk, nothing worth stealing. Perhaps, Poirot said, standing. But someone thought otherwise. Crane lingered by the door, his scarf's feather glinting. This place is falling apart, he said, his tone sharp. Or someone's tearing it apart. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The locket, the feathers, the broken figurine, the scattered papers, all connected. But how? And why now? The telegram about a buyer for Lord Reginald's collection loomed in his thoughts. Was someone trying to stop a sale or expose it? Back in the drawing room, Lady Eleanor stood as they entered. What was it? She demanded. A storage room, disturbed, Poirot said. Papers scattered, a chair knocked over, and a window open, Beatrice gasped. My locket, could it be there? No locket, Poirot said gently. But I will find it, mademoiselle, trust in Poirot. Madame Villette's eyes gleamed. A busy house, isn't it? So many accidents. Lord Reginald, still clutching his drink, growled, Enough of this. I'm locking the collection away tonight, no more nonsense. Poirot's mind churned. The collection was the key, or part of it. The locket, the feathers, the buyer, they all pointed to something hidden in Ravenwood. He needed to read the journal he'd found, but not with so many eyes watching, and Madame Villette. Her sly comments and sudden arrival made her a puzzle of her own. As the group dispersed, Poirot slipped to his room, locking the door. He pulled out the journal and opened it. The sharp handwriting was familiar, like the letters. One entry stood out. The locket holds the proof. The feather points the way. Beware the buyer. Poirot's heart raced. Proof of what? A crime? A secret? He tucked the journal away as a knock came at his door. It was Grayson, his face unreadable. Dinner in an hour, sir, he said, then paused. Be careful, Monsieur Poirot, old houses have sharp edges. Poirot smiled faintly. I am most careful, Monsieur Grayson. As the butler left, Poirot sat, the journal and feather in his hands. The riddles were piling up, and the drawing room had given him more questions than answers. But Hercule Poirot thrived on questions. The elusive stranger was close, and he would unmask them soon. Chapter 7. The Elusive Stranger. Hercule Poirot sat in his room at Ravenwood Manor, the journal, the black feather, and the silver key with its tiny feather etching laid out before him on the small wooden table. The words from the journal, the locket holds the proof, the feather points the way, beware the buyer, burned in his mind like a riddle waiting to be solved. The thud from the storage room earlier, the scattered papers, the open window, and now the growing pile of feathers, suggested someone was moving quickly, either leaving clues or covering their tracks. Poirot's little gray cells were alive with activity, sorting through the web of secrets that enveloped this strange house. The elusive stranger, whoever they were, was close, and he was determined to unmask them. The clock on the mantel showed. It was nearly time for dinner. He tucked the journal, feather, and key into the deep pocket of his gray coat, ensuring they were secure. The manor was a labyrinth of hidden motives, and every step he took revealed another layer. The arrival of Madame Villette, with her identical letter and sly demeanor, had added a new player to the game. Was she a curious bystander, a conspirator, or the mastermind behind the cryptic invitations? Poirot's instincts told him she was, more than she seemed, and he would need to watch her closely. He adjusted his tie, smoothed his mustache, and headed downstairs. The dining room was bathed in the warm glow of candles, their flames flickering against the polished mahogany table. The Ashbournes were already seated, each face a study in tension. Lady Eleanor sat at the head, her posture rigid, her eyes sharp, as they surveyed the room. Lord Reginald gripped a wine-glass, his knuckles white with suppressed anger. Charles slouched in his chair, his usual smirk replaced by a wary frown. Beatrice sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her pale face betraying her fear. Victor Crane stood by a tall window, his scarf's black feather catching the candlelight, his expression guarded. Madame Villette sat with elegant ease, her feathered hat replaced by a simple silk scarf, but her eyes gleamed with a knowing glint that made Poirot's senses sharpen. Grayson, the butler, moved silently, serving bowls of steaming vegetable soup. His face was as blank as ever, but Poirot watched him closely. The butler was everywhere, always present, always listening, yet never revealing. Was he merely a servant, or did he hold the key to the manor's secrets? Poirot's mind noted every detail, the way Grayson's hands moved with practiced precision, the way his eyes flicked briefly to each guest as he served. There was something about him that didn't quite fit. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Eleanor said, her voice cutting through the heavy silence, "have you made any progress on finding Beatrice's locket?" Poirot sipped his soup, the warmth grounding his thoughts as he scanned the table. "Progress, madame, comes in small steps. The locket is important, yes, but so are the feathers. They are not mere decoration. They are a message." Charles rolled his eyes, leaning back in his chair. "Not this feather nonsense again. They're just feathers, Poirot. Probably from some old pillow." "Are they?" Poirot asked, his tone gentle but pointed. "Then why do they appear in such curious places? Under pillows? In broken cases? Beside stolen lockets?" "No, monsieur, they are a sign. A signature." Beatrice's spoon trembled in her hand and she set it down. "It's like someone's watching us," she whispered, her voice barely audible, all the time. Madame Villette leaned forward, her voice smooth as velvet. "A watcher, perhaps? Or a thief who enjoys playing games?" Crane's jaw tightened, his fingers brushing the feather on his scarf. "Games like this end badly. I've seen it before." Poirot's ears pricked at the words. "Before, Monsieur Crane? You have experience with such games?" Crane hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "I travel. I hear things. People play tricks to hide bigger truths. That's all I meant." "Lord," Reginald slammed his glass down, the wine sloshing. "Enough of this nonsense. I want my collection safe and this foolishness stopped. Feathers, letters, broken figurines. Who's behind it?" Poirot leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "That, monsieur, is what I am here to discover. But I need your help. Tell me, what is so special about this manor? Why would someone summon strangers here with such mysterious letters?" The room fell silent. Lady Eleanor's fingers tightened on the arm of her chair. Charles glanced at his father, who stared into his wineglass as if it held answers. Beatrice's eyes dropped to the table, her hands twisting in her lap. Crane and Madame Villette exchanged a quick look, so brief Poirot nearly missed it. His heart quickened. They all knew something, but no one was willing to speak. Finally, Lady Eleanor broke the silence, her voice measured. "Ravenwood is an old house, Monsieur Poirot. It has history, some of it unpleasant, but nothing that concerns you or these guests." "History," Poirot repeated, his tone soft but probing. "And yet, someone thinks it concerns me. And Monsieur Crane. And Madame Villette." Madame Villette laughed softly, the sound like a chime in the tense room. "Perhaps we're here to uncover your secrets, Lady Eleanor. Old houses are full of them, are they not?" The air grew colder. Lord Reginald's face reddened, his voice a growl. "Watch your tongue, woman. You're a guest here, nothing more." Before the argument could escalate, Grayson entered with a silver tray holding a folded paper. "A telegram, my lord," he said, handing it to Lord Reginald. Reginald tore it open, his eyes scanning the words. His face paled, the anger draining away. "It's from London," he said, his voice low. "A buyer for the collection. He's arriving tomorrow." Charles sat up, his frown deepening. "What buyer? You never mentioned a sale." Reginald crumpled the telegram in his fist. "It's my business, Charles, not yours." Poirot's mind raced. The collection again. Artifacts, feathers, a broken figurine. Was Beatrice's locket part of it? And this buyer? Were they the buyer the journal warned about? He needed to see that collection, to understand what was at stake. he decided to push. "Monsieur, who is this buyer, and what do they want with your collection?" Reginald's eyes flashed. "A private matter, none of your concern." Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. "Reginald, perhaps we should—" "No," he snapped, cutting her off. "It's my collection, my decision." The room fell silent again, the tension thick. Poirot noted the rift between husband and wife. Lady Eleanor knew something her husband was determined to keep hidden. He turned to Madame Villette, testing the waters. "And you, madame? Do you know of this buyer?" Her smile was sly, her eyes glinting. "I know many things, Monsieur Poirot, but I keep my secrets, just as you keep yours." Charles laughed, a nervous edge to it. "This is getting ridiculous. Next, you'll say the locket's in the buyer's pocket." Poirot's mustache twitched. Charles's jests were a shield, deflecting attention. He was about to press further when a sharp knock came at the dining room door. Grayson opened it, revealing a young maid, her face pale and her hands wringing her apron. "Sir," she said to Lord Reginald, "there's something in the garden. You should see it." Reginald frowned, his patience thin. "What now? Speak, girl." The maid swallowed hard. "It's a statue, sir. Knocked over, and there's a feather on it." Poirot's heart skipped. Another feather. He stood, his voice calm. "May I join you, monsieur?" Reginald grunted but nodded. "Fine, let's see this nonsense." The group followed the maid outside, the cold night air biting through their coats. The garden was dark, lit only by a few flickering lanterns that cast eerie shadows across the hedges. Near a rose bush, a stone statue of an angel lay toppled, its wing cracked against the ground. On its base, tied with a thin string, was a black feather, glossy and identical to the others. Beside it was a small note. Poirot knelt, his fingers, careful as he untied the note. The handwriting matched the journal and the letters. "The truth is buried. Dig deeper." He showed it to the group, their faces lit by the lantern's dim glow. Beatrice gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Charles swore under his breath. Lady Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. Crane's eyes narrowed, and Madame Villette's smile faded, replaced by a flicker of unease. "What does it mean?" Lord Reginald demanded, his voice rough. Poirot stood, the note and feather in his hand. "It means, monsieur, that someone wants us to look closer, to find what is hidden, perhaps in your collection, perhaps in this house." "Hidden?" Charles snapped, his voice sharp. "This is madness. Statues falling, feathers everywhere. It's a prank gone too far." Madame Villette tilted her head, her voice soft but pointed. "Or perhaps a treasure hunt. How exciting." Crane stepped forward, his tone low and serious. "This isn't a game. Someone's trying to scare us. Or worse." Poirot pocketed the note and feather, his mind racing. The journal's words, "The locket is the key to the vault. The feathers mark the path," echoed in his thoughts. A vault. Was there a hidden vault in Ravenwood, tied to the locket and the collection? The silver key in his pocket felt heavier, its purpose still a mystery. He needed to find where it fit, but the manor was full of locked doors and watchful eyes. Back inside, the group returned to the dining room, but the mood was grim. Grayson resumed serving, his face as blank as ever, but Poirot caught him glancing at the feather before he tucked it away. The butler knew something, he was certain. Dinner ended in silence, the soup barely touched. Poirot excused himself, claiming fatigue, but his mind was far from rest. In his room, he locked the door and pulled out the journal, the key, and the new note. He read the journal again, finding another entry that sent a chill through him. The vault holds the family's shame. The locket opens it. The buyer must not know. A family secret, hidden in a vault, tied to the locket. The feathers were markers guiding him to the truth, or to danger. He was about to read more when a soft knock came at the door. He hid the journal and opened it, finding Beatrice, her eyes red from crying. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, "I need to tell you something, but not here. It's not safe." "Where, mademoiselle?" he asked, his voice gentle but urgent. "The library. Midnight. Please." She glanced down the hall, her face pale, then hurried away. Poirot closed the door, his heart pounding. Beatrice was ready to talk, but was she an ally or a trap? The elusive stranger was circling, leaving feathers and riddles at every turn. He would meet her, but he'd be ready for anything. The game was growing dangerous, and Hercule Poirot was no one's pawn. He sat back, his mind sorting through the clues. The feathers were everywhere, under pillows, in broken cases, on statues. They were deliberate, a trail left by someone who wanted to be followed. But who? Grayson, with his silent efficiency? Crane, with his guarded eyes and matching feather? Madame Villette, with her sly smiles and sudden arrival? Or one of the Ashbournes hiding a family secret so dark it required a vault? The silver key in his pocket was his next step. He needed to find what it unlocked. The journal mentioned a vault, but where was it? In the study, with Lord Reginald's collection? In the storage room, with its scattered papers? Or somewhere else hidden in the manor's ancient walls? Poirot glanced at the clock. It was nearing 11. He had an hour before meeting Beatrice. He decided to use the time wisely. Slipping into his coat, he pulled out the groundskeeper's disguise from his suitcase, the gray wig, the spectacles, the worn jacket. He transformed quickly, tucking his mustache under a false beard. Hercule Poirot vanished, replaced by Henri, the invisible worker. He left his room, moving quietly through the dark halls. The manor was still, the only sounds the creak of old wood and the distant howl of the wind outside. He headed to the east wing where the storage room had been disturbed. If the vault was real, it might be nearby. The storage room door was locked again, but the silver key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the room was as he'd left it, cluttered with crates and old furniture. He lit a small candle from his pocket, its light casting shadows on the walls. He searched carefully, tapping the walls for hollow spots, checking the floor for loose boards. Nothing. But as he moved a dusty chair, he noticed a faint outline in the wall. A panel, barely visible. He pressed it, and it clicked, sliding open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. His heart raced. The vault? He hesitated. Going down alone was risky, but time was short. He took a step, then froze as a shadow moved behind him. "Who's there?" A voice hissed. "Crane." Poirot turned, keeping his voice gruff. "Henri, sir. Groundskeeper." Checking the room, Crane stepped into the candlelight, his eyes suspicious. "At this hour? What are you really doing?" Poirot's mind raced. He couldn't reveal himself. "Heard a noise, sir. Thought it was the thief." Crane's hand went to his pocket and Poirot tensed, expecting a weapon, but Crane only pulled out a cigarette. "Get out," he said. "This isn't your place." Poirot nodded, shuffling past. He'd been caught, but the panel was his secret for now. He slipped back to his room, shedding the disguise. The clock showed 10 minutes to midnight. He grabbed his notebook and headed to the library. The library was dark, its shelves looming like silent watchers. Beatrice stood by a window, her silhouette, small against the moonlight. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." "What is it, mademoiselle?" he asked, keeping his voice low. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "The locket. It's not just a keepsake. It's a key. To something in this house. My mother told me before she died. But I didn't understand. Now I'm scared." Poirot's heart pounded. "A key to what?" "A vault," she said. "Under the manor. It holds something terrible. I don't know what, but someone wants it." Before he could ask more, a creak came from the hall. Beatrice gasped, grabbing his arm. "Someone's coming." Poirot pulled her behind a shelf, his finger to his lips. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. A shadow passed the door, pausing. Poirot held his breath, the silver key heavy in his pocket. The elusive stranger was near, and the truth was closer than ever. But so was the danger. Chapter 8. Threads of Deception. Hercule Poirot crouched behind the library shelf with Beatrice, her trembling hand clutching his arm as the shadow lingered outside the door. The creak of footsteps in the hallway was deliberate, almost taunting, as if the unseen figure knew they were being watched. Poirot's little gray cells raced, piecing together the clues. Beatrice's revelation about the locket being a key to a vault, the silver key in his pocket, the journal's cryptic warnings, and the ever-present black feathers. The elusive stranger was circling closer, weaving a web of deception, and Poirot was determined to untangle it. The footsteps paused, then faded down the hall. Beatrice let out a shaky breath, her eyes wide in the moonlight filtering through the library's tall windows. "Who was that?" she whispered. Poirot stood, his voice low but calm. "I do not know, mademoiselle, but I will find out. Now, tell me more about this vault. What did your mother say?" Beatrice glanced at the door, her voice barely audible. "She said it was under the manor, hidden for years. The locket opens it, but she never told me what's inside. Only that it's dangerous and must stay locked." Poirot's heart quickened. The journal's words echoed in his mind. The vault holds the family's shame. The locket opens it. A secret so dark it was buried beneath Ravenwood Manor. Was it tied to Lord Reginald's collection, the mysterious buyer, or the feathers that marked every step of this strange game? "And the feathers?" he asked, pulling the latest one from his pocket, its glossy black sheen catching the moonlight. "Do they mean something to you?" Beatrice shook her head, her hands twisting. "I've seen them before, but I don't know why. They started appearing after Mother died, in her room, in her things. I thought it was just coincidence." "There are no coincidences in a house like this," Poirot said gently. "Someone is leaving them for a reason, to guide us or to mislead us." Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared, Monsieur Poirot. Whoever took my locket, they know about the vault. They're after it." Poirot placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Fear not, mademoiselle. I will find your locket and uncover the truth. But you must tell no one of this conversation. Trust only Poirot." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I will." "Thank you." He escorted her to the door, checking the hall. It was empty, the manor silent except for the distant howl of the wind. "Go to your room and lock the door," he said. "I will see you in the morning." As Beatrice slipped away, Poirot stood alone in the library, his mind racing. The silver key in his pocket was likely the one Beatrice meant, the key to the vault, not the locket itself. The locket must hold something else, a clue, a map, or perhaps a literal key inside. He needed to find it, but first he had to explore the hidden staircase he'd discovered in the storage room. He moved quietly through the dark halls, his small frame blending into the shadows. The manor was a maze of secrets, its walls heavy with history. Every creak, every flicker of candlelight felt like a whisper of the truth. He reached the storage room door and tested the silver key again. It turned smoothly, and he slipped inside, relighting his small candle. The room was as he'd left it, cluttered with crates, old furniture, and the faint smell of dust. The hidden panel in the wall was still there, its outline barely visible. He pressed it, and it slid open, revealing the narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air was cold, damp, and heavy with the scent of earth. This was no ordinary cellar. This was the path to the vault. Poirot hesitated. Going down alone was risky, especially with an unknown stranger prowling the manor. But time was short, and the buyer's arrival tomorrow could change everything. He took a deep breath and started down the stairs, his candle casting long shadows on the stone walls. The staircase was steep, its steps worn smooth by years of use. At the bottom was a small chamber, its walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and boxes. In the center stood a heavy iron door, its surface etched with a faint design, a mask with a single feather. Poirot's heart raced. The vault. He tried the silver key in the lock. It fit perfectly but didn't turn. He frowned, examining the door. There was a second slot, smaller, shaped like a heart. The locket. Beatrice was right. It was the key to the vault. Without it, he couldn't go further. A soft noise above made him freeze. Footsteps, light but deliberate, were coming down the stairs. He blew out the candle and pressed himself against the wall, his heart pounding. The footsteps stopped, and a faint light appeared. A lantern, held by someone he couldn't see. "Who's there?" a voice called, low and sharp. It was Victor Crane. Poirot stayed silent, his mind racing. Crane here. Now? Was he the stranger, following the same trail of feathers? Or had he been watching Poirot all along? The lantern's light grew closer. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm. "It is only I, Monsieur Crane, Hercule Poirot." Crane appeared, his face half lit, his scarf's feather glinting. "What are you doing down here?" he asked, his tone suspicious. "I might ask you the same," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. "This is a curious place to wander at midnight." Crane's jaw tightened. "I heard noises. Thought it was the thief." Poirot smiled faintly. "A thief or our elusive stranger? Tell me, monsieur, why do you wear that feather on your scarf?" Crane's hand went to it, his fingers brushing the pin. "A gift. Means nothing." "Nothing?" Poirot said, stepping closer. "Yet it matches the feathers left all over this house. A coincidence, perhaps?" Crane's eyes flashed. "You're fishing, Poirot. Be careful you don't catch something you can't handle." Before Poirot could reply, a loud crash echoed from above, followed by a scream. It came from the main house. Crane swore and ran up the stairs, Poirot close behind. They emerged into the storage room, then raced to the main hall. The scream had come from the drawing room. Inside, Lady Eleanor stood over a shattered vase, her face pale. Charles was beside her, his hands raised as if to calm her. Beatrice stood in a corner, her eyes wide. Madame Villette sat calmly, her scarf slipping to reveal a small feather pinned to her dress. "What happened?" Poirot demanded. Lady Eleanor pointed to the floor. "I found this," she said, her voice shaking. A black feather lay among the vase's shards tied to another note. Poirot picked it up, reading the familiar handwriting. "The vault is near. The truth is nearer," Charles cursed. "This is getting out of hand. Who's doing this?" Madame Villette's smile returned, sly and knowing. "Someone who enjoys riddles, it seems." Poirot's mind raced. The vault was real, and someone was desperate to point him to it, or to stop him from reaching it. He glanced at Crane, then at Madame Villette, then at the Ashbournes. Grayson entered, his face blank as he began sweeping up the shards. "Grayson," Poirot said, "did you see anyone near this room?" "No, sir," the butler said, his voice flat. "I was in the kitchen." Poirot didn't believe him. Grayson was too present, too silent. He turned to Lady Eleanor. "Madame, this vault your daughter mentioned. What do you know of it?" Her face tightened. "There is no vault. Beatrice is confused." Beatrice stepped forward, her voice firm. "I'm not confused, Mother. You know it's real." Lady Eleanor's eyes flashed, but she said nothing. Lord Reginald stormed in, his face red. "What's all this noise? Another feather?" Poirot held up the note. "And a message, monsieur. The vault is the key to this mystery. I suggest you tell me what you know." Reginald's jaw clenched. "There's nothing to tell. This is my house, and I'll handle it." Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The threads of deception were tightening. Crane's late-night wandering, Madame Villette's cryptic remarks, Grayson's silent watchfulness, the Ashbournes' secrets. The vault was the heart of it all, and the locket was the key. He needed to find it before the buyer arrived. As the group dispersed, Poirot slipped back to his room, locking the door. He pulled out the journal and read another entry. "The stranger moves in shadows. Trust no one, not even family." His heart pounded. The elusive stranger was among them, and the game was growing deadly. But Hercule Poirot was ready to pull the threads apart, one by one, until the truth lay bare. Chapter 9. The disappeared dignitary, Hercule Poirot, stood in the dimly lit hallway of Ravenwood Manor, his mind buzzing with the night's revelations. The shattered vase, the latest black feather, and the note, "The vault is near." The truth is nearer had deepened the mystery. Beatrice's confession about the locket being a key to a hidden vault, the silver key in his pocket that fit but didn't turn, and the journal's warnings about a family shame all pointed to a secret, buried deep within the manor. The elusive stranger was weaving a dangerous game, and Poirot was determined to outplay them. But the arrival of a new clue, a scream and a crash, had set his little gray cells into overdrive. The drawing room was still tense when Poirot returned after his brief retreat to his room. Lady Eleanor stood by the fireplace, her hands clasped tightly, her face pale but composed. Lord Reginald paced his heavy steps, shaking the floorboards. Charles leaned against a wall, his usual bravado replaced by a nervous twitch. Beatrice sat huddled in a chair, her eyes darting to the door. Victor Crane stood near the window, his scarf's feather glinting in the candlelight, his expression unreadable. Madame Villette, her scarf now neatly pinned with a feather, watched the room with a sly smile that made Poirot's instincts sharpen. Grayson, the butler, had finished clearing the broken vase, his movements as silent and precise as ever. Poirot watched him closely. The butler's blank face and quiet efficiency were a mask, he was certain. Grayson knew more than he let on, and Poirot was determined to crack that mask. Before he could speak, a sharp rap came at the front door, echoing through the manor like a gunshot. The group froze. Grayson moved to answer it, but Poirot held up a hand. "Allow me, monsieur," he said, his voice calm but firm. He wanted to see who, or what, was arriving at this late hour. He opened the heavy oak door to find a man standing in the misty night, his coat soaked from the drizzle. He was tall, with a sharp face and graying hair, his eyes hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. A black feather was pinned to his lapel, matching the ones Poirot had found. The man's lips curved into a thin smile. "Monsieur Poirot, I presume. I am Sir Alistair Hawthorne. I was invited." Poirot's heart skipped. Another letter, another feather, another stranger. "Sir Alistair," he said, stepping aside. "Please come in." The man entered, shaking rain from his coat. The Ashbournes gathered in the hall, their faces a mix of shock and suspicion. Lady Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Who is this? We sent no invitation." Sir Alistair produced a letter, cream paper, red wax, mask and feather seal. "I received this," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "It said a matter of great importance awaits at Ravenwood. I assume you know why." Lord Reginald's face reddened. "This is outrageous. Another uninvited guest?" Poirot studied the letter identical to his own, Crane's and Madame Villette's. 4 letters now, all unsigned, all bearing the same symbol. The game was growing crowded and the stakes higher. "Sir Alistair," Poirot said, "may I ask your profession?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I am a diplomat, Monsieur Poirot. I deal in delicate matters." Charles snorted. "A dignitary? What's next, a king?" Beatrice's voice was soft but sharp. "Why are you here? What do you want?" Sir Alistair's gaze flicked to her, then away. "I was summoned. Beyond that, I know as little as you." Poirot's mind raced. A diplomat arriving in the dead of night with a feather on his coat. Was he the buyer Lord Reginald expected? Or another pawn in the stranger's game? The journal's warning, "Beware the buyer," echoed in his thoughts. "Let us move to the drawing room," Poirot said, gesturing. "We have much to discuss." The group settled uneasily, the fire's glow casting shadows that danced like specters. Grayson served tea, his eyes flicking to Sir Alistair as he poured. Poirot noted it. The butler was too attentive, too present. "Sir Alistair," Poirot began, "your arrival is timely. We have had disturbances, stolen lockets, broken artifacts, and these feathers." He held up the latest one, watching the man's face. Sir Alistair's expression didn't change. Feathers? Curious, I've seen them before in diplomatic circles. A symbol perhaps of secrecy. Crane leaned forward, his voice low. Secrecy? Or deception? Someone's playing us all. Madame Villette's laugh was soft, almost mocking. A game of shadows, it seems. How thrilling. Lord Reginald slammed, his fist on the arm of his chair. Enough games, I want answers. Who sent these letters? Poirot's eyes scanned the room. That, monsieur, is the question, but I suspect the answer lies in your collection, or in the vault beneath this house. Beatrice gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Lady Eleanor's face tightened. There is no vault, she said sharply. This is nonsense. Is it? Poirot asked, his tone gentle but probing. Mademoiselle Beatrice believes otherwise, and the locket, her key to this vault, is missing. Sir Alistair raised an eyebrow. A vault? Intriguing. What does it hold? Lord Reginald's voice was a growl. Nothing that concerns you. Poirot smiled faintly. Yet it concerns someone. The feathers, the notes, the thefts, they all point to a secret. And secrets, messieurs and mesdames, have a way of coming to light. Before anyone could respond, a loud crash came from upstairs, followed by a muffled cry. The group jumped, their faces pale. Poirot was on his feet, moving toward the stairs. Stay here, he said. But Crane and Sir Alistair followed, their steps quick. They reached the second floor, where the cry had come from Beatrice's room. The door was ajar, and inside, the room was in disarray, drawers pulled out, clothes scattered. Beatrice stood in the center, her face white, clutching a torn piece of paper. Another black feather lay on the floor, tied to a note. Poirot picked it up, reading aloud. The dignitary is not what he seems. Trust no one. Beatrice's voice trembled. Someone was in here. I heard them, and when I came in, this. Sir Alistair's face hardened. This is directed at me. Why? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Perhaps because you are the buyer, or perhaps because you too are part of the game. The man's smile returned, cold and sharp. I'm no buyer, Poirot. I'm here because I was summoned, like you. Crane's hand went to his pocket and Poirot tensed, but he only pulled out a cigarette. This is getting out of hand, Crane muttered. Someone's toying with us. Poirot knelt, examining the room. The window was locked, the floor undisturbed except for the feather and note. Whoever had been here was careful, leaving only what they wanted found. He stood, turning to Beatrice. Mademoiselle, anything else missing? She shook her head, tears in her eyes. Just this. She held out the torn paper. It was a photograph, ripped in half, a woman's face, young and smiling, with a feather in her hair. Your mother? Poirot asked gently. Beatrice nodded. It was in the locket, they took it. Poirot's heart raced. The locket's contents were the key, not just to the vault, but to the stranger's motive. He pocketed the note and feather, his mind racing. The dignitary, Sir Alistair, was now a target. Was he the buyer, despite his denial? Or was he another victim of the stranger's game? Back in the drawing room, the group was restless. Lady Eleanor's face was tight with anger. This is intolerable, she said. First Beatrice's locket, now her room invaded? Lord Reginald pointed at Sir Alistair. You show up, and things get worse. Explain yourself. Sir Alistair's voice was, Combat, I've nothing to explain. I'm as much in the dark as you. Madame Villette tilted her head, her scarf's feather catching the light. Are you, Sir Alistair? Diplomats are skilled at hiding truths. Poirot stepped forward, his voice steady. Enough accusations. The truth lies in the vault, and the locket will lead us there. We must find it before the buyer arrives tomorrow. Grayson appeared, his face blank. Shall I search the servants' quarters again, my lady? Lady Eleanor nodded. Do it, and lock every door tonight. As the group dispersed, Poirot caught Grayson's eye. The butler's gaze lingered a moment too long. Poirot's instincts screamed. Grayson was more than a servant. He needed to watch him, and Sir Alistair, and the others. The disappeared dignitary was only the latest riddle, and the threads of deception were tightening around them all. Chapter 10. A Glimpse of Truth. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room of Ravenwood Manor, the latest black feather and note clutched in his hand. The words, "The dignitary is not what he seems. Trust no one," echoed in his mind, adding another layer to the thickening mystery. The torn photograph from Beatrice's locket, the hidden vault, the silver key that didn't turn, and the arrival of Sir Alistair Hawthorne, the self-proclaimed diplomat with a feather on his coat, had turned the manor into a chessboard. Someone was moving the pieces, and Poirot's little gray cells were working furiously to anticipate their next play. The room was heavy with tension. Lady Eleanor's face was a mask of controlled fury, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Lord Reginald stood by the fireplace, his wine-glass empty, his eyes darting between Sir Alistair and Poirot. Charles leaned against a wall, his nervous smirk replaced by a scowl. Beatrice sat huddled in a chair, her eyes red from crying, clutching the torn photograph of her mother. Victor Crane stood near the window, his scarf's feather glinting in the candlelight, his silence louder than words. Madame Villette, her scarf pinned with a matching feather, watched the room with a sly smile that made Poirot's instincts sharpen. Grayson, the butler, hovered in the background, his blank face betraying nothing as he cleared the tea tray. Poirot's mind raced. The locket was the key to the vault, and the vault held the family's shame, according to the journal he'd found. The feathers were a trail leading him closer to the truth, or to a trap. Sir Alistair's arrival, with his identical letter and feather, suggested he was either a target or a player in this deadly game. And Grayson, his silent efficiency was too perfect, too calculated. Poirot needed to act, to pull the threads of deception apart before the mysterious buyer arrived tomorrow. "Sir Alistair," Poirot said, his voice calm but probing, "you call yourself a diplomat, yet you arrive in the night unannounced with a letter matching ours. Tell me, what delicate matters bring you to Ravenwood?" Sir Alistair's thin smile didn't waver. "As I said, Monsieur Poirot, I was summoned. The letter spoke of a matter of great importance. I assumed it concerned international affairs." Charles snorted, crossing his arms. "International affairs? In this old pile of stones? Come off it." Beatrice's voice was soft but sharp. "Why the feather on your coat? It's like the ones we keep finding." Sir Alistair's fingers brushed the feather pinned to his lapel. "A trinket. A gift from a colleague. Nothing more." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Nothing more? Yet it matches the feathers left with notes, in broken vases, in stolen lockets. A curious coincidence, no?" Sir Alistair's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Madame Villette leaned forward, her voice smooth. "Coincidences are rare in a house like this, Monsieur Poirot. Perhaps our diplomat knows more than he admits." Lord Reginald slammed his glass down, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "I've had enough of this. Strangers in my house breaking my things, stealing from my daughter. Who sent you here?" Poirot held up the latest note, his voice steady. "Someone who knows your secrets, monsieur. Someone who wants the truth to come out. This vault, this locket, these feathers, they are all connected. I suggest you tell us what you know." Lady Eleanor's face tightened. "There is no vault. This is nonsense." Beatrice stood, her voice trembling but firm. "It's not nonsense. Mother, you know it's real. Mother told me about it before she died. The locket opens it." Lady Eleanor's eyes flashed. "Beatrice, be quiet." "No!" Beatrice snapped, tears spilling. "Someone's after it. They took my locket. Tore her picture. They're in this house." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Poirot's heart quickened. Beatrice's outburst confirmed the journal's hints. The vault was real, and the locket was its key. But what was inside? A treasure? A secret? Or something darker? Before anyone could speak, a loud bang echoed from upstairs, followed by a muffled shout. The group froze, their faces pale. Poirot was already moving, his small frame quick as he headed for the stairs. "Stay together," he called. But Crane, Sir Alistair, and Charles followed, their footsteps heavy behind him. They reached the second floor, where the shout had come from the east wing near the storage room with the hidden staircase. The door was open, and inside, papers were scattered anew, a chair overturned. Grayson stood in the corner, his face blank but his hands gripping a broom tightly. "What happened?" Poirot demanded, his eyes scanning the room. Grayson's voice was flat. "I heard a noise, sir. Came to check. Found this." Poirot knelt. By the scattered papers, his eyes sharp. Among them was another black feather tied to a small note. He picked it up, reading aloud. "The truth is closer than you think. Look where shadows fall," Charles cursed. "Another one? This is getting ridiculous." Crane's voice was low. "Someone's here right now. They're watching us." Sir Alistair's smile was gone, his eyes cold. "This is no game. Someone's playing with fire." Poirot stood, the note and feather in his hand. "Indeed, monsieur. And I intend to find them before the fire spreads." He turned to Grayson. "You were quick to arrive, monsieur. Did you see anyone?" Grayson shook his head. "No, sir. Just the mess." Poirot didn't believe him. The butler was too calm, too present. He glanced at the hidden panel in the wall, still closed. Had someone been down to the vault? Or were they trying to distract him? Back in the drawing room, the group was restless. Lady Eleanor stood by the fire, her composure cracking. "This must stop," she said. "My daughter's room, my husband's study, now this." Poirot held up the note. "The stranger is bold, madame. They leave clues to taunt us, or to guide us. I must see your husband's collection. It may hold answers." Lord Reginald's face reddened. "My collection is private. No one touches it." "Even if it holds the key to this mystery?" Poirot asked, his voice gentle but firm. "The locket, the vault, the feathers, they all point to your artifacts." Reginald hesitated, then grunted. "Fine, tomorrow. But only you, Poirot." Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He needed to see the collection, but he also needed to protect Beatrice. Her outburst had made her a target, and Sir Alistair, his claim of being a diplomat, felt thin. Was he the buyer, hiding his true purpose, or another pawn like Crane and Madame Villette? As the group dispersed, Poirot slipped to his room, locking the door. He pulled out the journal, the silver key, and the new note. The journal's latest entry chilled him. "The dignitary hides his face. The vault hides the truth. The feathers lead to both." His heart pounded. Sir Alistair was central to this, but how? He needed to test him, to push him. But first, he had to protect the locket's secret. He decided to use his disguise again. Henri, the groundskeeper, to move unseen. He changed quickly, tucking his mustache under the false beard and donning the gray wig and spectacles. The manner was quiet as he slipped into the hall, his steps silent. He headed to the east wing, hoping to check the hidden staircase again. But as he neared the storage room, he saw a figure in the shadows, tall, cloaked, moving quickly. Poirot followed, keeping his distance. The figure stopped at a locked door near the servants' quarters, pulling out a key. It glinted in the moonlight, a silver key, like his own. Before Poirot could move closer, the figure slipped inside and locked the door. His heart raced. Was this the stranger? He tried his own key in the lock, but it didn't fit. Another door. Another secret. He needed to find Beatrice, to warn her. As he turned, a soft hand grabbed his arm. "Monsieur Poirot?" It was Madame Villette, her scarf loose, her eyes wide. "What are you doing dressed like that?" Poirot cursed silently. His disguise was useless now. "Madame," he said, removing the wig, "I am seeking the truth. And you, what brings you here?" She smiled, but it was tense. "I saw someone, a man, cloaked with a feather in his hat. He went that way." She pointed to the door. Poirot's mind raced. Sir Alistair? Crane? Or someone else? "Stay here, madame," he said, moving to the door. He knocked, but there was no answer. He needed to find that figure, and fast. As he turned back, a scream pierced the night from Beatrice's room. He ran, Madame Villette behind him, They burst in to find Beatrice on the floor, clutching her arm, blood seeping through her sleeve. A black feather lay beside her with a note. "Stop looking or she pays." Poirot knelt, helping her up. "Mademoiselle, what happened?" "Someone grabbed me," she gasped. "They had a knife. They said to stop you." Poirot's heart pounded. The stranger was desperate now and dangerous. But the glimpse of truth was closer than ever, and Hercule Poirot would not stop until he unmasked them. Chapter 11. Names in the mist. Hercule Poirot knelt beside Beatrice in her room at Ravenwood Manor, his heart pounding as he pressed a handkerchief to the shallow cut on her arm. The black feather and note, "Stop looking or she pays," lay on the floor, a stark warning from the elusive stranger. The attack on Beatrice was no longer a game of riddles. It was a threat, bold and violent. Poirot's little gray cells raced, weaving together the clues. The locket, as a key to a hidden vault, the silver key that fit but didn't turn, the journal's warnings of a family's shame and the feathers marking every step. Madame Villette stood in the doorway, her scarf's feather glinting, her face pale but her eyes sharp with curiosity. "Beatrice, ma chère," Poirot said, his voice gentle but urgent. "Tell me exactly what happened. Every detail." Beatrice's breath hitched, her eyes wide with fear. "I was in bed. I heard a noise like a window creaking. Then someone grabbed me. They were cloaked, their face hidden. They had a knife. Small, sharp. They whispered, 'Tell the detective to stop or you're next.' Then they left the feather and note and ran." Poirot's eyes scanned the room. The window was locked, the curtains undisturbed. The door showed no signs of forced entry. Whoever attacked her had a key or knew the manor's secrets. He helped Beatrice to a chair, then picked up the note and feather, adding them to his growing collection. The handwriting matched the journal, the letters, and the other notes. Sharp, deliberate, almost taunting. Madame Villette stepped closer, her voice soft. "This is escalating, Monsieur Poirot. A knife? They mean business." Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching. "Indeed, madame. The stranger is desperate. They fear what we might find." Footsteps pounded down the hall, and Victor Crane burst in, his scarf loose, his eyes wild. "What happened? I heard a scream." "An attack," Poirot said, standing. "Mademoiselle Beatrice was threatened, a warning to stop my investigation." Crane's jaw tightened, his hand brushing the feather on his scarf. "This place is a madhouse. Who's doing this?" Before Poirot could answer, Lady Eleanor and Lord Reginald appeared, followed by Charles and Sir Alistair Hawthorne. Grayson the butler lingered in the background, his face blank but his eyes flicking to the feather in Poirot's hand. "What's this?" Lord Reginald demanded, his face red. "My daughter attacked?" Lady Eleanor rushed to Beatrice, her composure cracking. "Are you hurt, darling?" "Just a scratch," Beatrice said, her voice shaky. "But they took my mother's photograph. The other half." Poirot's heart quickened. The torn photograph from the locket. First one half, now the other. What was in that image that the stranger wanted so badly? He turned to the group, his voice firm. "This is no random act. The locket, the photograph, the feathers, they are all connected to the vault. We must find it, and the locket, before the buyer arrives tomorrow." Sir Alistair's eyes narrowed. "You keep mentioning this vault. What proof do you have it exists?" Poirot pulled the silver key from his pocket, holding it up. "This, monsieur, fits a lock in a hidden chamber beneath this house. But it needs the locket to open the vault. Someone in this manor knows where it is." Lady Eleanor's face paled. "That's absurd. There's no such chamber." Beatrice stood, her voice stronger. "There is, mother. You know it. Father knows it. Stop hiding it." Lord Reginald's fists clenched. "Beatrice, enough. You're upset imagining things." "I'm not," she snapped. "Mother told me about the vault. She said it holds something dangerous." Charles laughed, a nervous edge to it. "What? A family ghost? This is ridiculous." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Not ridiculous, monsieur. The journal I found speaks of a vault holding the family's shame. The locket is the key, and someone is desperate to keep it locked. Madame Villette tilted her head, her scarf's feather swaying. A family shame? How intriguing. Perhaps a scandal or a crime. Sir Alistair's smile was cold. Or a treasure. Diplomats hear of such things. Hidden vaults, secret deals. Crane's voice was low. Whatever it is, someone's willing to hurt for it. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The attack on Beatrice was a warning, but it also revealed the stranger's fear. They were close to the truth, and the stranger was losing control. He needed to act quickly, before another move was made. "Grayson," Poirot said, turning to the butler. "You were nearby. Did you see anyone in the hall?" Grayson's face remained blank. "No, sir. I was checking the servants' quarters." Poirot's instincts screamed. Grayson was too calm, too quick to appear. He was either protecting someone or hiding his own role. Poirot decided to push. "Monsieur, you are always present when trouble strikes. A curious habit for a butler." Grayson's eyes flicked to him, but he said nothing, bowing slightly and stepping back. Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. "Leave my staff alone, Poirot. Find the locket and stop this." Poirot bowed. "I intend to, madame, but I need access to Lord Reginald's collection tonight." Reginald's face darkened. "Out of the question. It's locked, and it stays that way." "Then we are at an impasse," Poirot said, his voice steady. "The collection may hold the locket or a clue to its location. Delay only helps the stranger." Sir Alistair stepped forward. "I agree with Poirot. If this vault is real, the collection might point to it. Let's end this now." Reginald hesitated, then grunted. "Fine, but only Poirot and I. No one else." The group dispersed, Beatrice escorted to a new room by Lady Eleanor. Poirot followed Lord Reginald to the study, his heart pounding. The collection was the heart of the mystery, and he was about to see it. The study was dim, lit by a single lamp. Shelves lined the walls, packed with artifacts, golden coins, jeweled daggers, ancient statues. In a glass case, Poirot saw a small, silver box, its lid etched with a feather. His pulse quickened. Was this part of the vault's secret? Reginald unlocked the case, his hands shaking. "Look, but don't touch," he growled. Poirot examined the box closely, his magnifying glass revealing tiny scratches around the lock. "This has been opened recently," he said, "by someone with a key." Reginald's face paled. "Impossible. I have the only key." "Then someone has a copy," Poirot said, his voice calm. He tested the silver key from his pocket. It didn't fit. But as he turned, he noticed a small drawer in the desk, its lock matching the key's shape. He slid it in, and it clicked. Reginald lunged forward. "What are you doing?" Poirot opened the drawer, revealing a bundle of letters, tied with a black ribbon. A feather was tucked among them. He untied the bundle, scanning the top letter. It was in the same sharp handwriting. "The locket is hidden where the shadows meet. Find it before the buyer does." Reginald grabbed the letters, his face red. "These are private." "Are they?" Poirot asked, holding up the feather. "Or are they part of the stranger's game?" Before Reginald could answer, a scream echoed from downstairs. Poirot ran, Reginald behind him. They reached the drawing room to find Charles clutching his hand, blood dripping. A knife lay on the floor, a black feather tied to its handle. "They attacked me," Charles gasped. "Cloaked, fast. They ran out the back." Poirot's heart raced. The stranger was striking again, bolder now. He knelt by the knife, reading the attached note. "Names in the mist hide the truth. The vault is your last chance." Crane burst in, followed by Sir Alistair and Madame Villette. "What now?" Crane demanded. Poirot stood, his voice firm. "The stranger is among us, monsieur and madame. They know we're close. We must find the locket tonight." As the group argued, Poirot's mind churned. The names in the mist: Crane, Villette, Hawthorne, the Ashbournes, Grayson. One of them was the stranger, hiding in plain sight. The vault was the key, and the locket was its lock. He needed to find it before the next attack, or the truth would slip away in the mist. Chapter 12. The hidden room, Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room of Ravenwood Manor, the air thick with fear and suspicion. The knife with its black feather and note. Names in the mist hide the truth. The vault is your last chance. Lay on the floor beside Charles, who clutched his bleeding hand. The attack on Beatrice, followed by this assault on her brother, proved the elusive stranger was growing desperate. Poirot's little gray cells buzzed, weaving together the clues. The locket as the key to a hidden vault. The silver key that unlocked secrets but not the vault itself. The journal's warnings of a family shame, and the feathers marking every violent step. The stranger was among them, and Poirot was determined to unmask them before the mysterious buyer arrived. Charles winced as Lady Eleanor bandaged his hand, her face pale but steady. "It was quick," he said, his voice shaky. "A cloaked figure, couldn't see their face. They slashed me and dropped that knife." Lord Reginald's face was red with rage. "This is my house. Who dares attack my son?" Victor Crane stood by the window, his scarf's feather glinting, his eyes narrow. "Whoever it is, they're not playing anymore. That knife means business." Madame Villette, her scarf's feather swaying, tilted her head. "A warning, perhaps, to stop us from finding this vault?" Sir Alistair Hawthorne, the diplomat, stood calmly, his own feather pinned to his coat. "Or to push us toward it. Someone wants that vault opened." Poirot's heart raced. The notes, the feathers, the attacks all pointed to the vault. The journal had called it the family's shame, and Beatrice had confirmed the locket was its key. The silver key in his pocket had unlocked a drawer with cryptic letters, but the vault required the locket itself. He needed to find it, and fast. "Messieurs and mesdames," Poirot said, his voice steady, "the stranger is bold, but they are also afraid. They attack to stop us, but their clues push us forward. We must find the locket tonight before the buyer arrives." Lady Eleanor's eyes flashed. "There is no vault. This is madness." Beatrice, sitting quietly, spoke up, her voice firm, despite her fear. "It's real, Mother, you know it. The locket opens it. We can't keep pretending." Lord Reginald rounded on her. "Enough, Beatrice, you're upsetting your mother." Poirot stepped forward, holding up the latest note. "This says the vault is our last chance. I believe it is under this house, and I have found a hidden staircase leading to a locked door. The locket is the key. We must search every corner of Ravenwood." Grayson, the butler, appeared with a tray of water, his face blank as ever. Poirot watched him closely. Grayson was always there, always silent, always watching. Was he the stranger or merely a servant caught in the web? "Grayson," Poirot said, "you have keys to every room. Can you open the manor's locked doors for a search?" Grayson's eyes flicked to Lady Eleanor, then back to Poirot. "Most, sir. Some rooms are private." "Private?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "In a house of secrets, nothing is private." "Lead us, monsieur." Lady Eleanor nodded reluctantly. "Do it, Grayson, but stay with us." The group moved through the manor, Grayson unlocking doors to dusty parlors, storage closets, and guest rooms. Poirot's eyes scanned every corner, searching for the locket or more feathers. In a small sitting room, he found a portrait of a woman, Beatrice's mother, he guessed, wearing a heart-shaped locket with a rose engraving. A black feather was tucked into the frame, almost hidden. Poirot plucked it out, his heart quickening. "Another clue," he said, showing the group. "The locket is near." Charles, his hand bandaged, frowned. "That's Mother's portrait. Why put a feather there?" "To point us to the truth," Poirot said. "Or to taunt us." Madame Villette's smile was sly. "A family portrait, a family secret. How poetic." Sir Alistair's voice was cold. "This is no poem. Someone's playing a dangerous game." Crane's hand brushed his scarf's feather. "And they're winning. We're chasing shadows." Poirot ignored them, his mind focused. The portrait was a clue, but where was the locket? He led the group to the east wing, to the storage room with the hidden staircase. Grayson unlocked the door and Poirot pushed the panel open, revealing the narrow steps descending into darkness. Lord Reginald's face paled. "What's this?" "A hidden room," Poirot said. Or the path to one. I found it earlier, with a locked door. At the bottom. The locket will open it. Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. This is absurd. That's just an old cellar. Is it? Poirot asked, turning to her. Then why does the journal speak of a vault? Why does the stranger attack to keep it hidden? Beatrice stepped forward, her voice trembling. Let him look, Mother, we need to know. Grayson lit a lantern, its light casting eerie shadows. Poirot led the way down, the group following reluctantly. The air grew colder, the smell of damp earth stronger. At the bottom was the iron door, its mask and feather etching glinting in the lantern's glow. The silver key fit, but didn't turn. The heart-shaped slot beside it confirmed Poirot's theory. The locket was the key. We need the locket, he said, turning to the group. It is not here, but it is in this house. Crane's voice was low. Then we tear the place apart. Sir, Alistair nodded. Agreed, but we must be careful. The stranger is watching. As they climbed back to the storage room, a loud thud echoed from above, followed by a muffled cry. Poirot's heart raced. Another attack? He ran upstairs, the group behind him. The sound came from the library, its door ajar. Inside, books were scattered across the floor. A shelf toppled. In the center was a black feather tied to a note. The locket is where the heart lies. Find it or lose all. Beatrice gasped, clutching the torn photograph. The heart? My locket? Poirot's mind raced. The heart-shaped locket, the portrait, the vault. Everything pointed to Beatrice's mother. He turned to Lady Eleanor. Madame, your late husband's first wife, Beatrice's mother. What was her name? Lady Eleanor's face tightened. Clara. Why? Clara, Poirot repeated, his eyes gleaming. And her locket is the key. Where did she keep her things? Lord. Reginald's voice was gruff. In the attic, old trunks, nothing more. Show me, Poirot said, his tone firm. Grayson led them to a narrow staircase at the manor's rear, unlocking a heavy door to the attic. The air was dusty, filled with the scent of old wood. Trunks lined the walls, their lids caked with grime. Poirot opened one labeled Clara, finding dresses, letters, and a small jewelry box. Inside was a silver locket, heart-shaped with a rose engraving. Beatrice gasped. That's it. Poirot opened it. Inside was a tiny key, shaped to fit the vault's heart-shaped slot. No photograph, just the key. The stranger had taken the picture but left the locket behind. Why? Before he could speak, a shadow moved in the corner. A cloaked figure lunged, grabbing the locket from Poirot's hand and bolting for the stairs. Crane and Sir Alistair gave chase, but the figure vanished into the dark halls. Poirot's heart pounded. The stranger was here, watching us. They have the locket. Madame Villette's voice was calm. But you have the key, Monsieur Poirot. The game is not over. He nodded, clutching the tiny key. The hidden room, the vault, was within reach. But the stranger was one step ahead, and the names in the mist were still hidden. Poirot's eyes scanned the group. Crane, Villette, Hawthorne, the Ashbournes, Grayson. One of them was the stranger, and he would find them before the night was through. Chapter 14. Midnight Whispers. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room of Ravenwood Manor, the leather book from the vault clutched in his hands, its pages heavy with the secrets of Clara Ashbourne's scandal. The latest black feather and note, the truth is out. Run. Lay on the table, a chilling warning from the elusive stranger. The air was thick with tension, the flickering firelight casting shadows that seemed to whisper accusations. Poirot's little gray cells buzzed, weaving together the clues. The locket as the key to the vault, the silver key that opened the chest, the journal's warnings of a family shame, and the newspaper clipping tying Sir Alistair Hawthorne to Clara's past. The stranger was desperate, their attacks growing bolder, and Poirot was determined to unmask them before the buyer's arrival at dawn. The group was on edge. Lady Eleanor sat rigidly, her eyes darting between her family and the strangers. Lord Reginald gripped the arm of his chair, his face red with barely contained rage. Charles, his hand bandaged from the earlier attack, paced nervously, his usual bravado gone. Beatrice clutched the torn photograph of her mother, her face pale but resolute. Victor Crane stood by the window, his scarf's feather glinting, his silence heavy with suspicion. Madame Villette, her own feather pinned to her scarf, watched with a sly calm that set Poirot's instincts on edge. Sir Alistair, his diplomat's facade cracking, adjusted the feather on his coat, his cold smile fading. Grayson, the butler, stood in the corner, his blank face a mask Poirot longed to crack. "Messieurs and mesdames," Poirot said, his voice steady. "The stranger knows we have opened the vault. They fear the truth in these papers." He held up the leather book. "Clara Ashbourne's scandal is no longer hidden. But we must find the locket and the stranger before they strike." Again, Lord Reginald's voice was a growl. "What scandal? Clara was my wife. She was troubled, but that's all." Beatrice's eyes flashed. "She wasn't troubled, father. She was betrayed. Those papers prove it." Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. "Beatrice, stop. You don't know what you're saying." "I know enough," Beatrice snapped, tears in her eyes. "Mother told me about the vault. She said it held proof of what happened to her, and now someone's trying to keep it quiet." Sir Alistair's smile returned, thin and cold. "A family scandal, then. Common in old houses like this. But why involve us?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A good question, monsieur. You are tied to Clara's past, as this clipping shows." He held up the newspaper article, the photograph, of a younger Sir Alistair beside Clara. "You were no diplomat then, were you?" Sir Alistair's jaw tightened. "That was years ago. A mistake, nothing more." Madame Villette laughed softly. "Mistakes don't summon detectives and diplomats to haunted manors, Sir Alistair." Crane's voice was low, his hand brushing, his scarf's feather. "Someone's using that mistake to play us, and they're not done." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The vault's contents, letters, photographs, and the clipping pointed to a betrayal involving Clara and Sir Alistair. But why the feathers, why the locket? And why now, with a buyer coming? The journal's warning, "Beware the buyer," loomed large. Was Sir Alistair the buyer hiding his true purpose? Or was the buyer another player, yet to arrive? Before he could speak, a soft whisper came from the hall like a breath of wind. The group froze. Grayson moved to the door, his lantern casting a dim glow. "Stay here," he said. But Poirot was already following, his small frame quick and silent. The hall was dark, the air cold. The whisper came again, from the staircase leading to the upper floors. Poirot climbed, Grayson behind him, the others trailing reluctantly. The sound led to a narrow corridor lined with old portraits, their eyes glinting in the lantern light. At the end was a small door, slightly ajar. Poirot pushed it open, revealing a cramped room filled with dusty furniture and crates. A single black feather lay on the floor, tied to a note. "Midnight hides the truth. Look where the light fails." Beatrice gasped. "Another one?" "They're everywhere." Charles swore under his breath. "This is a game, and we're losing." Madame Villette's eyes gleamed. "Or winning." "The stranger is leading us, step by step." Poirot knelt, examining the note. The handwriting was the same, sharp, deliberate, taunting. He stood, his voice calm but firm. "The stranger is close. They watch us, leaving clues to guide or mislead. We must find the locket before they act again." Sir Alistair's voice was cold. "And if it's a trap, you're chasing shadows, Poirot." "Shadows, monsieur," Poirot said, his mustache twitching. "Shadows cast light on the truth, and I see clearly." Grayson's face remained blank, but his eyes flicked to the feather. Poirot watched him closely. The butler was always there, always silent, always watching. Was he the stranger, orchestrating the chaos, or a pawn like the rest? "Let us search this room," Poirot said. "The note speaks of light failing. Perhaps a hidden corner holds the locket." The group spread out, checking crates and furniture, Poirot tapped the walls, listening for hollow spots. Behind a dusty mirror, he found a loose panel. He pressed it, and it clicked open, revealing a small alcove. Inside was a velvet pouch, and within it a silver locket, heart-shaped with a rose engraving. Beatrice gasped. "That's it, my locket." Poirot opened it, but it was empty. No photograph, no tiny key. The stranger had taken its contents, leaving the shell behind. Why? He handed it to Beatrice, who clutched it tightly, tears in her eyes. "It's empty," she whispered. "They took everything." "Not everything," Poirot said, his voice gentle. "We have the locket, and we have the vault's key. The truth is near." Lord Reginald's voice was gruff. "Enough of this. I'm locking the vault tonight. No one touches my collection." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Your collection, monsieur, may hold more than you know. I must see it again, now." Reginald hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. But only you." As the group dispersed, Poirot followed Reginald to the study, his mind racing. The locket's recovery was a victory, but the missing photograph and key suggested the stranger was still ahead. In the study, Reginald unlocked a glass case revealing artifacts, coins, daggers, statues. Poirot's eyes fell on a small silver box, its lid etched with a feather. He'd seen it before, but now it seemed different, its lock scratched. "This box," Poirot said, "has been opened recently. What is inside?" Reginald's face paled. "Nothing important, just trinkets." Poirot tested the silver key from his pocket. It clicked and the box opened, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a black ribbon. A feather was tucked among them. He read the top letter. "Clara's truth must stay buried. The buyer must not know." Reginald lunged for the letters, but Poirot stepped back. "These, monsieur, are part of the truth. Clara was betrayed. By whom?" Reginald's voice was a growl. "Leave it alone, Poirot. It's the past." "The past," Poirot said, "is why we are here, and the stranger will not let it rest." A scream pierced the night from downstairs. Poirot ran, Reginald behind him. They reached the drawing room to find Madame Villette clutching her arm, blood seeping through her sleeve. A black feather lay beside her with a note. "The truth cuts deep. Stop now." Poirot knelt, helping her up. "Madame, who did this?" Her voice was steady despite the pain. "A shadow, cloaked fast. They vanished." Crane's eyes narrowed. "This is madness. We're all targets now." Poirot's heart pounded. The stranger was striking at everyone. Their motives clear, but their face still hidden. The midnight whispers were growing louder, and the truth was closer than ever. But so was the danger. Poirot clutched the letters, the locket, and the tiny key, knowing the next move would decide the game. Chapter 15. The final mask, Hercule Poirot, stood in the drawing room of Ravenwood Manor, the latest black feather and note. "The truth cuts deep. Stop now." Clutched in his hand as he steadied Madame Villette, her arm bleeding from the stranger's. "Attack." The air was thick with fear, the firelight casting flickering shadows that seemed to dance with the manor's secrets. The recovered locket, now empty, rested in Beatrice's trembling hands, while the tiny key from the vault and the bundle of letters from Lord Reginald's study weighed heavily in Poirot's pocket. His little gray cells raced, piecing together the clues. Clara Ashbourne's scandal, the vault's proof of betrayal, the feathers marking every violent act, and the looming arrival of the mysterious buyer. The stranger was among them, their motives unmasked but their face still hidden, and Poirot knew the final confrontation was at hand. The group was frayed, their nerves stretched to breaking. Lady Eleanor's face was pale, her hands clasped tightly as she watched Madame Villette. Lord Reginald stood by the fireplace, his rage simmering, his eyes darting to the letters Poirot held. Charles, his bandaged hand trembling, leaned against a wall, his bravado gone. Beatrice clutched the locket, her eyes red but defiant. Victor Crane, his scarf's feather glinting, stood tense, his silence heavy. Madame Villette, despite her wound, maintained her sly calm, her scarf's feathers swaying as she sat. Sir Alistair Hawthorne, his diplomat's mask slipping, adjusted the feather on his coat, his cold eyes fixed on Poirot. Grayson, the butler, hovered in the corner, his blank face a fortress Poirot was determined to breach. Madame Villette, Poirot said, his voice gentle but urgent. Describe your attacker. Any detail. A voice? A scent? Her eyes gleamed, her voice steady despite the pain. A cloaked figure, quick, no voice, no scent, just the knife and that feather. Crane's voice was low. They're hitting us one by one. Who's next? Sir Alistair's smile was thin. Perhaps you, Crane. Or me. The stranger seems to enjoy chaos. Beatrice's voice trembled. Why won't they stop? We have the locket, the key. What more do they want? Poirot held up the bundle of letters, his voice calm but firm. They want these secrets buried, mademoiselle. Clara Ashbourne's betrayal, her scandal. It is the heart of this mystery. And someone in this room is desperate to keep it hidden. Lord, Reginald's face reddened. Those are my private letters. You've no right, Poirot. Private? Poirot asked, his mustache twitching. They speak of Clara's truth, of a betrayal that led to her downfall. They name names, monsieur, and one of those names is here. Lady Eleanor's voice was sharp. This is nonsense. Clara was troubled. There was no betrayal. Beatrice stood, her voice fierce. Stop lying, Mother. The vault proves it. Mother was hurt by this family, by someone in this house. Charles snorted, but it was forced. What, a soap opera? This is getting absurd. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Not absurd, monsieur. The journal, the letters, the clipping, they tell a story. Clara Ashbourne was betrayed, and the proof is in the vault. The stranger wants to stop us from revealing it, or to force us to. Sir Alistair stepped forward, his voice cold. And you think I'm the betrayer, Poirot? That clipping is old news. Old news, Poirot said. But new motives. You were no diplomat then, monsieur. What were you to Clara? Sir Alistair's jaw tightened. A friend. Nothing more. Madame Villette laughed softly. Friends don't hide in manners under false titles, Sir Alistair. Before he could reply, a loud creak came from the hall, followed by a thud. The group froze. Grayson moved to the door, his lantern casting a dim glow. I'll check, he said, but Poirot was already moving, his small frame quick. The hall was dark, the air cold. The sound came from the main staircase, where a portrait had fallen, its frame cracked. A black feather was pinned to the canvas with a note. The final mask falls at midnight. Be ready. Poirot's heart raced. Midnight was minutes away. The stranger was making their final move. He turned to the group now gathered in the hall. The stranger is here, among us. They know we have the truth. We must stay together and face them. Crane's eyes narrowed. Face them? They've got a knife and no face. How do we fight that? Poirot held up the letters. With the truth, monsieur. These name the betrayer. Let us return to the drawing room and read them. Together. The group hesitated, then followed, their footsteps echoing in the silent manner. In the drawing room, Poirot stood by the fire, the letters in his hand. He untied the ribbon, reading aloud. Clara, my love, they will never let us be. R knows, and he will destroy us. Beatrice gasped. R? Father? Lord Reginald's face paled. That's not me. I loved Clara. Poirot continued, his voice steady. The feather is our sign. Keep it close. We'll meet where shadows fall. Madame Villette's eyes widened. The feathers. They were Clara's sign? Poirot nodded. Clara and her lover used feathers as a symbol. Someone is using them, now to honor her or to hide her truth. Sir Alistair's voice was sharp. And you think I was her lover? That's absurd. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Not you, monsieur, but you knew him. The clipping places you with Clara, but another name appears in these letters. He pulled out another page, reading, G will help us. He knows the manor's secrets. Grayson's face remained blank, but his hands tightened on the lantern. Poirot turned to him. Monsieur Grayson, you were here when Clara lived. You were no mere butler, were you? The room went still. Lady Eleanor's voice was a whisper. Grayson? Grayson's eyes flicked to her, then back to Poirot. I served this family, sir. Nothing more. Poirot stepped closer, his voice low. You served Clara. You loved her. These letters name you as her ally, her confidant. You helped her hide the truth in the vault. Grayson's mask cracked, his voice trembling. She was betrayed by him. He pointed at Lord Reginald. Reginald roared, lunging forward. Lies, you were nothing, Grayson. Poirot held up a hand, stopping him. Not lies, monsieur. The vault's papers prove it. Clara was betrayed by you, Lord Reginald. You discovered her affair, and you locked her away, claiming she was mad. The scandal was buried, but not forgotten. Beatrice's voice broke. Father, is it true? Reginald's face crumpled. I loved her, but she shamed me. Lady Eleanor's voice was cold. You destroyed her, Reginald, and now someone's destroying us. Poirot turned to Grayson. You are the stranger, are you not? You sent the letters, left the feathers, stole the locket, to expose the truth. Grayson's eyes burned. She deserved justice. I sent for you, Poirot, because you find the truth. The buyer, he's coming for the vault. He can't have it. Sir Alistair's voice was sharp. The buyer? Who is he? Grayson smiled, a bitter twist. You, Hawthorne. You're no diplomat. You're here to buy the vault's secrets, to sell them to the highest bidder. Sir Alistair lunged, but Crane grabbed him, pinning his arms. Enough lies, Sir Alistair shouted. Poirot's voice was calm. No lies, monsieur. The feathers, the notes, they were Grayson's doing. But the attacks, those were you, Sir Alistair. You wanted the locket, the vault, the secrets, to silence them forever. Madame Villette clapped softly. Bravo, Poirot. The final mask falls. A clock chimed midnight. Grayson pulled a knife from his coat, its blade glinting. No one takes the vault, he said, his voice low. Poirot stepped forward, his voice steady. Put it down, Grayson, the truth is out. Clara's justice is served. Grayson hesitated, then dropped the knife, tears in his eyes. For Clara, he whispered. Sir Alistair struggled in Crane's grip. You've no proof. Poirot held up the letters. These are proof, monsieur, and the buyer's telegram, addressed to you. The room erupted, Reginald shouting, Beatrice crying, Lady Eleanor collapsing into a chair. Poirot stood calm, the feathers and notes in his hand, the truth unmasked at last. The game was over and Hercule Poirot had won. Chapter 16. The masquerade's end. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room of Ravenwood Manor, the firelight casting a warm glow over the chaos that had just unfolded. The black feathers, the cryptic notes, and the letters from Clara Ashbourne's past lay scattered on the table, their secrets laid bare. Grayson, the butler, stood defeated, his knife on the floor, his confession of orchestrating the feathers and letters to expose Clara's betrayal still ringing in the air. Sir Alistair Hawthorne, unmasked as the buyer and the attacker, was restrained by Victor Crane, his false diplomat's facade shattered. The locket, the vault, and the truth were finally within Poirot's grasp, and his little gray cells hummed with satisfaction. The masquerade was over, but the final pieces needed to be set right before the night's end. The room was heavy with emotion. Beatrice's face was streaked with tears, the locket clutched tightly in her hands, its empty heart a symbol of her mother's pain. Lady Eleanor sat slumped, her composure broken, her eyes fixed on her husband with a mix of betrayal and resignation. Lord Reginald, his confession of locking Clara away still raw, stood silent, his fists unclenched, his rage replaced by shame. Charles hovered near the door, his bandaged hand trembling, his eyes darting between his father and the strangers. Crane, his scarf's feather now a reminder of the deception, held Sir Alistair firmly. Madame Villette, her own feather glinting, watched with a faint smile, as if the drama were a play she'd enjoyed. Poirot, the conductor of this unraveling, held the letters and the tiny key ready to close the case. Messieurs et mesdames, Poirot said, his voice calm but commanding, The stranger's game is finished. Grayson sought justice for Clara. Ashbourne using feathers and letters to summon us here. Sir Alistair sought profit, attacking to seize the vault's secrets. The truth is unmasked, but justice must now be served. Lord Reginald's voice was hoarse. Justice? My family is in ruins, Poirot. What more do you want? Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone was firm. The truth, monsieur, is not enough. Clara's betrayal was your doing. You drove her to despair, hid her in shame. You must face that. Beatrice stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tears. Father, you lied to me, to all of us. Mother wasn't mad. She was broken by you. Lady Eleanor's voice was a whisper. Reginald, we should have told her. All these years, Reginald's shoulders sagged, his face crumpling. I thought I was protecting us, the scandal. It would have destroyed the Ashbournes. Poirot nodded. And so you buried it in the vault with Clara's letters and proof. But the past does not stay buried, monsieur. Sir Alistair struggled in Crane's grip, his voice sharp. You've no proof I'm the buyer, Poirot. This is speculation. Poirot held up the telegram from Lord Reginald's study, addressed to Sir Alistair. This, monsieur, confirms your intent to buy the vault's contents. And your attacks on Beatrice, Charles, Madame Villette, were to silence those who came close to the truth. Madame Villette's smile widened. A desperate man, Sir Alistair. Your mask was thin from the start. Crane's grip tightened. What do we do with him? And Grayson? Poirot turned to Grayson, who stood silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. Monsieur Grayson, you sought justice, but your methods, letters, thefts, threats caused pain. Why not speak the truth openly? Grayson's voice was low, trembling. I was a servant, Poirot. Who would believe me? Clara deserved better. I sent for you because I knew you'd see. Poirot's heart stirred with pity. You loved her, oui? And you carried her pain all these years. Grayson nodded, tears falling. She was my world. When Reginald locked her away, I swore I'd make it right. Beatrice approached Grayson, her voice soft. You knew my mother. You tried to help her. Grayson looked at her, his eyes wet. You're like her, Miss Beatrice, brave. I'm sorry for scaring you. Poirot turned to the group. Grayson's crime was deception, but his motive was love. Sir Alistair's was greed, and his actions were violent. We must call the authorities. Lord Reginald's voice was gruff. And me? What of my crimes? Poirot's eyes were steady. Your crime, monsieur, was pride. You hid Clara's truth, but you cannot hide from it now. Confess to your family, and perhaps you will find peace. Lady Eleanor stood, her voice firm. I'll call the police. This ends tonight. Charles hesitated, then spoke. What about the vault? Those papers? Do we destroy them? Beatrice shook her head. No, they're mother's story. We keep them, to remember her. Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching. A wise choice, mademoiselle. The truth is not to be feared. As Lady Eleanor left to make the call, Poirot gathered the feathers, notes, and letters, placing them in a neat pile. The locket, now empty, rested in Beatrice's hands, a symbol of closure. Sir Alistair was led to a locked room by Crane and Charles to await the police. Grayson sat quietly, his confession freeing him, if only in spirit. Madame Villette approached Poirot, her voice low. A fine performance, Monsieur Poirot. You unmasked them all. Poirot's eyes twinkled. The truth, madame, is the only mask worth wearing. Crane returned, his scarf loose, the feather gone. I owe you one, Poirot. I thought I was here for a job, not a drama. Poirot smiled. Life, monsieur, is often both. As the group waited for the police, Poirot stepped to the window, looking out at the misty moors. The manor was silent now, its secrets laid bare. Clara Ashbourne's ghost could rest, her truth told. The feathers, the locket, the vault, they were no longer riddles but answers. The clock struck 1, its chime soft in the quiet room. Poirot turned back, his work done. The masquerade's end had come, and Hercule Poirot, with his little gray cells, had brought light to Ravenwood's darkest shadows.